Another month, another Grin Grappler. Folks, we're back again. It feels like it's been a lifetime, fellas. It's been too long, if you ask me. We have
We
Bam
met
Bam
IRL
Bigelow.
since the last one, man.
We did.
Kayfabe. Bam Bam Bigelow is our subject this evening, and what a time this should be. Right? We had an interesting lineup to delve into, but first,
See if we can get
God,
Bammers in focus here. Oh, there we go. That's better. This is
that the ECW one or what's the?
This is when towards the end of WCW they had Marvel toys making their action figures.
Oh my God, I thought it was Mattel. It looks so good. Good Lord.
It's one of the better ones. Like they had, fittingly enough, a really great hack that was made in that line too. And for me and my fig fed when I was a little kid, this Bam Bam came with the best ladder that was ever made for like wrestling figures. So it was a big moment in my 13-year-old life.
My goodness, have you explored any of the Mattel options with Bam Bam while we're on the subject? Because they've made some killer Bam Bams, brother.
On my ECW shelf, which is just like a composite of all these ECW guys, like in my opinion, their best figure form, I have that elite one that came with the television title of him.
Oh hell yeah! Which will be fitting later this evening. Bam Bam Bigelow, which I've just stolen from the chat. Thank you, Ben. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. About 6 hours ago, I'm like, I should go try and find somewhere a shirt with flames on it to wear for this, and nowhere sells them. It would have been a really good bid. I would have cut my hair too.
Hold on. Stop. Let's go. Rewind. Go back. Okay. A shirt with flames on it was your target.
Right.
When you say no one sell, do you mean? I assume you mean like within a reason because you had 6 hours.
Well, I could have got Amazon, but that wouldn't have been here till tomorrow. It would have killed
hold
the whole
on
bit.
now.
Got that Guy Fieri action, the button up with.
That's what I was going to go with. It would have been great.
How many tattoo parlors are there in St. Louis?
That's true. There's a good amount.
I went with a buzz. I definitely wasn't doing Bam Bam, but I went with it nonetheless. I don't know, Bob. I feel like you could have pieced it out more. But anyway, you good?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Good, mate. Now, can you just confirm before we move on, you're not going to be on the Grin on Thursday? Because there's been a lot of reports and rumors.
That is correct. I will not be there.
Okay. Enjoy OVW television. The Oracle of Wrestling. Back again.
Yeah.
Certainly been too long in your case, Oracle.
Yeah.
Certainly been too long. How have you been and how are you doing tonight, mate?
I'm okay. Wrestling is still kicking for me, but football on, which always hurts it.
Yep.
There's there's some exciting things coming in wrestling, but we'll have to see.
Roman Reigns will be back any month now.
Yeah.
Big man is back.
Yeah, I'm well. I'm just this was kind of like my first wrestling stuff I've done, like other than DVR and the shows. So watching the Bam Bam matches yesterday was the first dive back into the graps in a couple weeks for me. True dive other than the DVR weekly.
Right. The skim that happens with weekly television. Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll get into that as we go here. Contrarian Alex, as you mentioned, you've revealed our kayfabe real life meeting, which we definitely didn't do a podcast about. So it hasn't been that long, but nonetheless, how have you been?
Pretty well. Life's been jumbled and whatnot, but one of the things that keeps organization or like routine in my life right now with all the chaos is the weekly Contrarians recording and then the monthly recording of the Grin Grappler, which I always look forward to. Happy to say that as of about 10:30 Central Time last night, American football is officially back for the season. The Cincinnati Bengals are on the board, so I'm in a much better mood right now than I would have been if they lost again. We got the revenge on the Rams for 2022 Super Bowl, and I'm a happy man. 2022, yeah.
It's well known I'm a big football guy. Alex,
sorry,
are you aware that two of the Joe Holbert Promotions Mount Rushmore wrestlers are Cincinnati Bengals fans? Are you aware of this?
Carl Anderson, and who's the other one?
The Messiah of the Backbreaker. One at Roderick Strong.
Really?
Don't get any better than that, brother.
I don't know why. I literally thought you were going to stop at the Messiah and there was going to be this revelation that I never knew you were a huge fan of the Messiah from XPW fame. I was going to be like, the guy with one thumb? All right, why not?
Look, he may be a Bengals fan. We don't
Where do
know.
all these Bengals fans come from, man? Like they come out of the woodwork.
Fucking trenches. I was back in the Neil Rackers days. I was there in
Oh no, I mean I get it.
at the fucking playoffs that we made it to.
You're original Ohio kid. You're fine. I'm talking about these randoms that have shown up in the.
Oh, I mean, when you have a quarterback is
that's true.
When you have a quarterback is just unbelievably good looking as Joe Burrow, people are going to come out of the woodwork. But speaking of unbelievably good looking people, I'm very excited to talk about Bam Bam Bigelow today.
I agree. Probably the best looking person from Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Well, hey, come on. Give some love to Springsteen. But yeah, Bam Bam's up there.
Before we go any further, I would like to just note that we were not alleging that the Machine Gun Carl Anderson is a fake fan of anything, let alone his football team. Can we make that clear? Because it's very important. We have to follow rules around here. But nonetheless, as we mentioned a time or two, this program is indeed about Bam Bam Bigelow. Often cited as one of the great big men, certainly one of the most agile big men. Right? It's kind of he's defining legacy in wrestling history. And he's an iconic figure. It goes without saying. Now, this was an interesting month because we were really struggling initially to figure out what are his definitive matches. So much so that we even pondered expanding beyond our 6 matches. I think Oracle Lab, we had a conversation off air and was like, we can't do that for Bam Bam. It's impossible. We can't do it. And we didn't. But we ended up coming with a lineup that, features 6 different promotions, which I think kind of paints a picture in itself. But before we get into our lineup, Bob, I'll start with you. I'm really intrigued where everyone's at on this guy. I don't know. Bob, your fandom of Bam Bam Bigelow, if there is such a thing, what have you kind of made of him historically as a fan before doing this? And paint the picture for us, mate.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had seen the Lawrence Taylor match. I've seen a couple of the ECW matches. I didn't see the 2 Brett matches from 1993 till this year. Those are both very good. But as far as where it started with him, it's probably from Legends of Wrestling as well because he was in those games. I mean, he wasn't involved with the ECW revival in WWE, but he was on good enough terms where they still showed him in clips and stuff. So I kind of got some knowledge from that too. But yeah, and it's mostly just been since the network came along that I've seen more of him. And even that didn't scratch the surface, compared to what we've seen today and some of the other stuff that I've found that he was doing around the times they were watching.
Yeah, very interesting career. And, as I kind of alluded to there, bounced around an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, what about you, mate? Big fan? Where's your fandom start? So on and so forth. Tell us about it.
I mean, you already kind of discussed it. Bam Bam Bigelow, it has to be in the top 10 most memorable looks a wrestler has ever had.
Yes.
His fucking head is tattooed, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to, and in a lot of ways, our Terry Funk episode that we did I never really thought about it, but he wasn't the NWA champion in the 70s, but he has a catalog that's kind of funky in the sense of he was wrestling Andre the Giant on pay-per-view in the golden era of WWF, and then he was wrestling Taz on pay-per-view 10 years later, 12 years later, what have you. I don't remember the first time I saw Bam Bam, but I do remember he was a bad guy. It probably would have been in 93-ish.
Right.
That I remember seeing him, because as we talked about in the Lex episode, the Lex Express kind of derailed my interest in the WWF. And I remember I knew he was with the WWF back before I was born, or in the late 80s. He debuted, I think, at WrestleMania 4 for the company, or around that time. But anyway, the video store in my neighborhood had old videos like the Coliseum best ofs or the old pay-per-views. So I knew he was a good guy for a while. And, he was in the first WWF video game, WrestleMania. He was one of the 6 or 8 characters you could play as. And I remember when I got back into wrestling through Shawn Michaels in late 95, watching Survivor Series 95, and Bam Bam would wrestle. That's when his last match when he wrestled Goldust. And I was like, to me, he seemed outdated at that point as a kid. I was like, this guy's still wrestling. But 95 was also the year that WrestleMania the arcade game came out, and Bam Bam was the most awesome character to play in that game. So I was always him. He had an awesome boot, and if you got on the top rope, he would do his diving headbutt, and if you hit the opponent, it would set him on fire, because that game was very Mortal Kombat-ian. And so that's my youth memory of Bam Bam, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more in our third act. But when I found out he had a run in ECW, it blew my mind. It was years after the fact because, the internet wasn't as prevalent as it is now. We didn't have things like the WWE Network. And I love his ECW run so much. And then when he came to WCW after that, he came in hot. I remember that's, I would have been watching that in real time when he came to WCW. And by the end, if you watch the final Nitro, he's in bad shape, man. It's pretty depressing. And so, like, he's one of those wrestlers that during my childhood and, early teens was just kind of always around and then petered out real quick. And he was one of those guys, rest his soul. But when he passed, I was like, I thought he had been dead for like 10 years now because he kind of just like fell off the map. But, yeah, I don't think any of us are going to come away from this with like Terry Funk or Bret Hart views about him being the greatest ever. But like, man, what a career and like a wingspan he had in terms of what he was able to do. And I think we picked a wonderful assortment of matches to kind of show what he was capable of.
I certainly hope so. I mean, to your point, it's interesting because his career is not, it's not that the length is staggering or remarkable, right? It's more that he was around for a period of immense change.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of like the idea of him, as you mentioned, going from Andre to a decade later being a focal point of ECW. His career, while not especially by modern standards, God forbid, isn't crazy long, but his kind of relevance was across like 4 different versions of US wrestling in a strange way. And you kind of watch that play out, which, so as you phrased it, was very funky.
So like, I think the best, like, we talk about this almost every time we do a wrestler from a bygone era of like, so the next WrestleMania will be 10 years since Daniel Bryan won at WrestleMania 30. And while, a lot's changed, there is not the visual optics shock that comes to you of seeing Bam Bam Bigelow tag with Hulk Hogan and then wrestle Rob Van Dam within a 10-year span. Like that shook me to my core, like seeing him do the brother promo with Hulk Hogan and then he's in ECW. It's crazy.
It was a transformative time and he was there for a lot of that. So, we'll kind of go through each chapter of that as we go. The Oracle of Wrestling. I'm intrigued. You and I talked a little bit about this off air, and we you even said it before I could beat you to the punch. You said he's a guy that you generally kind of like the idea of as much as the real wrestler itself. Speak to that a little bit more and kind of elaborate on your own fandom. Oracle, go for it.
Well, I mean, like if you really break, and go deeper than we do here. I mean, he's not somebody that has like a crazy catalog or a deep catalog.
Right.
In terms of like the in-ring stuff. And in some ways he kind of get the negativity out of the way, he can be a little lazy or just not really put on, much of a show sometimes. But like that really wasn't the appeal of him. It was always his look. And even as a kid, he was out of wrestling by the time I started watching. I started watching in late '99 and very early 2000. By that point, I mean he was on WCW TV, but he was so out of shape.
It was done. Yeah.
Just he was done. Like it wasn't. He was very much on the undercard, not very much an important factor on the show at all. But I will say he was always somebody that I immediately knew who he was, like even as like a 6 and 7 year old, because he was so recognizable in his appearance. But I mean, he was just, like you couldn't miss him because he was this big dude with bald, gnarly looking teeth and face, fucking tattoo on his head, and like he looked like one of these hardcore punk kids that hung out with my brother when I was like 6 or 7 years old. Like he was, it was just, it was very like, very in your face, very unforgettable. He was a great pro wrestler, in terms of that. As a worker, he if you really dive deep, the idea is better than what we got. But in terms of sort of being remembered for his look and for his style and for his sort of presence, and also just the fact that what we were just talking about, being there for all those huge changes in that short amount of time and being able to sort of migrate and kind of be a wrestling chameleon in a way and fit his character, into the rock and wrestling, late rock and wrestling with Hogan, Memphis with Lawler, like random indies after the territories died in the early 90s, like goofy mid 90s new gen WWF.
Yep.
Of course ECW and Nitro era WCW. Like he was able to sort of morph into all those, and if even though sometimes he didn't, necessarily like have the best stuff, it was still Bam Bam, and it was like, oh cool, Bam Bam. Like even if you didn't love the match or whatever, like he just somehow seamlessly fit into everything. And of course he also has some cool stories of like, what wasn't he the one who like, there a rumor that was online, Alex, you might remember this, where he was like high on acid and saved kids from a fire or something?
Yeah, they talk about that a little bit in the Dark Side of the Ring that they did. He also fought Chemo in a shoot fight, like Brazil or something. Or he and he was piggyback on what Oracle was saying there. He also, if nothing else, he would do a moonsault and be like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah, and he did the fat guy moonsault, which always cost me more, Like,
oh yeah.
So yeah, I've definitely become a fan of his just from just like, even though I didn't even see him, there's a feeling of like that like late 80s and 90s feeling when you see Bam Bam, and like he's always been fun, as Joe pointed out early in the show. He's always just a fun wrestler to watch.
Had an LJN and a Hasbro.
Only the best. He's definitely a guy who my own like I've gone up and down with, because there was definitely a point in my fandom. I think we all have this where you really lock in on the catalog idea, right? Like, because as you mentioned, that is where he struggles. I think, especially when we'll get into this a little bit later. Unfortunately, he is right alongside in terms of timing, and almost directly, well, not almost, he directly is alongside Vader. In one of our matches tonight, we'll get into that. And it has to be said, from that point of view, he does pale in comparison to Vader. Now, I'm sure if I was a professional wrestling babyface, I would say, well, hold on, give me some Bam Bam before I have to quote Vader. But that's a different thing. As fans, you want great matches, right? So he was a guy who, at that point in my fandom, I kind of didn't get the hype. But we have to be honest, this is a unique entry for Grin Grappler, because a lot of the time we come on here and we try and celebrate wrestlers who we feel history hasn't done justice.
Yeah.
Bam Bam is honestly really celebrated in wrestling history, and at times, almost it feels like beyond what he actually achieved, right? Because people loved that idea, that visual, and those memories. I don't mean that as a slight. It's an interesting. He's kind of a contrast in that way. I've talked about this before with Hennig's a good example of that too. Hennig was great, but in history, Hennig is viewed as one of the best workers ever, and his career had flashes of that, right? But it's just different guys kind of age different in that way. Alex, what was you going to say, mate? Come.
After you brought up Henning, get ready for 20 years from now when we're still doing this and having to deal with people saying Dolph Ziggler is one of the greatest workers of all time.
I'll be there.
Well, the thing with Bam Bam too that I think is we always talk about like the current like younger wrestling fans, when they discover Bam Bam, yeah, of course they're going to obsess, and just based on his look alone. And then also they, Jonah, is it just Jonah now? Like Kenta, all caps?
Bronson Reed, brother.
Bronson Reed.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one match in this where Bam Bam does the splash, and like you can tell like Bronson Reed has like meticulously figured out how to look exactly like Bam Bam doing it, and he had that gear and like, but yeah, that's kind of the way it works now with some of these celebrated wrestlers being in the video game, or like Bam Bam I know has gotten several elites, and so people who weren't familiar with that see that. And also, of course, if all you know is kind of the homogenized blend that it is now, and you see someone like Bam Bam, you're like, holy shit. So I can understand how people look back on him a bit more fondly than, or not more fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's hard. Like when we say, again, this show is a nod and a celebration, but I do think it's part of his story. And to follow up, as I got further away from the catalog part of my nerdy fandom, and Oracle often would stress to me the importance of performance, right? It's one thing to have a great match, but if you have a chance to wrestle a 30-minute match every month, you're entitled to turn out some good matches. But how good is the performance, and how does that hold up? As I watched these matches, I had a better appreciation of Bam Bam, just watching the way he bumped for punches on guys, and the way that and again, he was not always a great attention to detail guy, but he was armed with a great feel for wrestling, right? Some of his touches in terms of selling as a big man, we'll get into the first match in a moment, but he's one of the great rookies in wrestling history. Absolutely precocious talent. So, a fascinating story. A guy who probably didn't, I don't think probably is even needed, he didn't reach his potential, but in not reaching his potential, he had a career of 12 years of relevance on the national wrestling stage, which kind of tells you how talented he was. So many moving pieces. We'll delve into them more kind of thoroughly here as we go, but an interesting case, a unique case. Now, we've referenced our lineup. I think that's very much evident with our lineup tonight. We have a kind of unique approach to it in that he's a hard guy to do in the traditional way we used to do these, right? We've kind of got looser as we've gone. And we ultimately settled on a deal where with each match is a different promotion. So we start with the famous Jerry Lawler feud, which he worked at the end of his rookie year and then just afterwards. And we start with the most famous match of that. Then we head to his WWF run, which was in many ways the height of his actual push, right? I mean, LT was a great moment, but we're going to get Survivor Series. That's big time.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to, we make an interesting stop in the UWF, which will give us a chance to go in many different directions, off to Japan, and then back for the ECW, WCW leg of his career. So it's kind of a different approach, but I think we get a good idea of who Bam Bam was across that. I think we end up with like a 12-year, 13-year maybe span. So hell of a ride ahead. Let's get into it. Act 1, as I mentioned, we kick off with the Texas Death Match opposite Jerry the King Lawler. We're in Memphis here. This is September 8th, 1986, just over a year after Bam Bam's professional debut, which I believe was August 85, famously promoted by Paulie Dangerously, which was the first wrestling match Paulie ever promoted. He did it at what was the nightclub? Do you remember what the nightclub was called? Famous nightclub in New York. It was that was the big attraction, Bam Bam's wrestling debut.
Studio 54.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. So that was the deal with his debut. He quickly headed to Memphis, and often among wrestling nerds such as ourselves, the Jerry Lawler feud is cited as the actual work of his career, and he's doing it as an almost rookie here. Man, a lot to get into. This stipulation is always very funny. This is a Jerry Lawler tour de force, but there is a lot to look at in terms of Bam Bam's just absurd knack for pro wrestling. Oracle, you put this match forward immediately. These matches are cited very often in kind of hardcore fan circles. Mm-hmm. Tell us what you knew about this going in, and then tell me what you thought upon rewatch.
Oh yeah, this is just like a quintessential Lawler versus Monster match from the '80s. Lawler was just, I mean, he's a fucking pervert, but he's one of the all-time great wrestlers. And yeah. Oh my God! Oh, have you seen his terrifying look now, where he has like the white beard? It's horrifying.
That picture he posted, he's wearing that cowboy hat with like the Browns jersey. I just showed it to my sister and I said, "What's the problem?"
But he was, of course, terrific in this, and it was one of the more put over matches from the '80s in Memphis in terms of him working a monster, and it was also kind of showed how good Bam Bam was as a rookie, and showed how much promise he had early on. Different look for Bam Bam here. Different gear. Doesn't quite have the look and whatnot that we're all familiar with. But this is like quintessential like Memphis, man, like classic, like Mid-South Coliseum, like Lance Russell on commentary. Just awesome stuff. Very much psychology based, and like working the crowd and like reacting to all these little touches, which is the kind of stuff that I love. Early on they do this awesome stuff where like Lawler's frustrating Bam Bam with his quick punches and like his like moving his feet and like causing Bam Bam to like stumble and like charge and miss and all this other stuff. What I really love is once Bam Bam gets a hold of Lawler and he gets like his big slow big man punches. Lawler like sells it like death in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, boom, right when he gets him, like Lawler's like, selling it like death, and then it's just really good stuff. Like very old school. Everything's very simple. We do get color eventually because it's Memphis. But it takes time. They build to that. Bam Bam. It's a Texas death match, so there's like the pins, then you have to do the count after the pin and stuff and whatnot, and like not just Memphis, but all the territories did it. Where like there was like 8 falls in a Texas death match, so like you'd have a bunch of like and that can be. I'm used to it. I haven't watched a lot of 80s stuff, but that can be something you have to kind of adjust yourself to a little bit.
Was this like the original way? Is this like the Dory Funk Sr. execution of a Texas death match?
I believe so.
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, with the reset in the middle, I think this was. Yeah, it's
it can be for people who are very used to the modern style, particularly with that stipulation. This could be a chore. Obviously, I loved it because psychology and the crowd work. Bam Bam does a good job of just kind of working over Lawler and kind of stalking him and like working over the ribs and they do a really good job of like Lawler making a big comeback, and it's your typical match in that way. Of course, there's a seconds which Memphis is great with. Larry Sharp second for Bam Bam, and I think is that Bill Dundee? That's Lawler's second.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Larry Sharp was certainly out there. I know that. I registered that as he was talking throughout the entire match.
Sharp comes in and fucking crowns Bam Bam. Lawler ducks and like Larry Sharp crowns Bam Bam in the head with the with the chair shot. Of course, that's after a ref bump because it's also Memphis ref bump.
Yeah.
Memphis started a lot of what we see in wrestling today, folks. So.
There's a direct link there too.
Jared Calhoun takes a big ref bump, and we get that awesome chair shot, and then the finish the match kind of gets. I don't know. I kind of got caught. I was a little bit confused because I've seen it one other time years ago, but I guess it kind of gets thrown out in a way.
What happens is they declare the rule is that once the count is not beat, it's just whoever gets up first. So they could just be there all night.
Right.
So then the crowd's like roots Lauder up right at the count of, I guess at that point it'd be around 40 or 50.
Yeah.
But he's up first, so he wins the belts.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
And then Bam just kind of storms off, whatever.
Yeah.
But this was just a lot of fun. It just showed. Again, it's a very simple formulaic match, but it shows how well Bam Bam understood psychology, within the ring, which is really impressive considering a lot of rookies nowadays can be very athletic and do the physical stuff very well, but they like understanding crowd work and psychology is like that takes a long time. I mean,
Lawler's
obviously
leadership
even guys like a Bam Bam got better over time, but like it shows you like what they're being trained. I'm being critical of but like it shows you like of how things are different. Like I feel like a lot of rookies were better back then, but
Lawler is incredible leading the ship in that way too, right? Leading the thing that way. Alex, go ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Perfect place for that.
There's like an example I can think of is I think a lot of people who aren't aware Ricky Starks has been wrestling for 10 years would look at that strap match and say that, oh, Danielson took this lump of clay and made something out of it. Whereas like, Ricky, I can attest to was trained the way people like myself and Devin would prefer. But we don't have many Lawlers anymore, in sense of like that can take someone who's really young and like a Braun Breaker. Like who would we have on like the main roster that like if he had like a high profile match with him could kind of be like, I mean, maybe Roman, but like, all right, slow down, now do this, that type of thing.
I think the issue is, I think there are guys who are capable of it. It's more
the agenting and whatnot.
Yeah, and the way that we do TV now, where it's like every single cut has to be meticulously plotted and it needs to be like a film,
Yeah.
Because I remember that being the thing when, ironically, to take it to circle back here, that was the gig they gave Dolph. I remember they paired him with Braun and they had a couple matches.
Yep.
And some went better than others. And it's like, you can learn from that. But Dolph can only teach so much when a match is being put together to that degree. It's like, if they worked a weekend on house shows, they could do it. But it's different.
And how WWE always has that fucking weird checklist of, all right, you can do whatever you want, but within that, you got to do this, and this. Like,
right. Yeah, it is. And I kind of talked about this when I was at that Bloodline tag that ended wrestling. That was a great night, and partly there was something very special about seeing guys like actually work to the people, which they did that night, and they were that's because that's all Lawler's doing here. If the people wasn't where he wanted him to be, he would have changed up and gone a different direction. He was out there dancing. That's wrestling in its most simple form.
That's an appropriate time to bring up, as always, the ultimate like modern example in my mind of a wrestlers. Miro and Hobbs is a good example of that recently too. But like, Walter and PCO clearly had an idea of one thing they were going to do, and they got out there and just started hitting each other, and people were going nuts. And so Big Walt was like, all right, this is what we're going to do from this point. And so, yes, it is an interesting, not to say PCO was a rookie by any means at that point in his career, but it's an interesting thing to bring up, the idea of like, they're clearly not taught to listen to the crowd anymore. They come to you, God damn it.
Yeah, work the cameras, brother. To be fair, it's hard to work to the crowd when you're looking at empty seats and a hard cam, but nonetheless, this finish they did here for this match. I don't know if you guys are aware that the next week they came back and had Bam Bam and Jerry team up as baby faces. This is Bam Bam.
That's also Memphis, brother.
Yep, absolutely, bro. Go pack them in next week.
You know what? I bet they had an angle in promo where they did it so well you were convinced they were friends.
Absolutely.
Because that was the beauty of Memphis back then.
That was the game, brother. Bobby, what did you think of this one?
I liked it quite a bit. Bam Bam was getting a ton of offense early on, which I think really added to it. And by early on, it ended up being like the first entire half of the match, which again, I wasn't expecting it. And, it did a lot to put him over. And, selling his hand from punching Lawler too much, Lawler bleeding from the punches. It's all good stuff. And then, once they finally get outside, Lawler throws him in the barricade. The whole thing like collapses. It ruled, man. Like I really enjoyed it. And it didn't feel as long as it was. It was engaging. I mean, the rest periods obviously are unfortunate, but other than that, whenever they're not doing that, like everything they did kind of felt like it had a purpose, even when they did the sleeper hold spots.
You mentioned the right hand deal where he hits the post and he has that incredible sell where he's kind of guarding it back. And then they do that spot, which was, and again, folks, Jerry Lawler, but peak Lawler as a wrestler, where he teases the test of strength with a good hand because he knows Bam Bam will bite and he fires the jab. And Lance popped huge, and I did too. It was
Lance was so good on commentary too.
Like
he points out Bam Bam hiding his hand because it hurts. God, Lance was so good at commentary. He was
It's amazing watching this because Lawler, he takes what Bam Bam could do physically, but he places things in a way where everything matters in this match. And he probably never had an opponent that did that to this degree ever again, as well as Lawler did here. Like, genuine. And obviously, he wrestled great wrestlers. Like, he had good matches with Brett. But Lawler's psychology is extraordinary, man. Like, his timing, the way that he makes each single moment and step matter of a match.
Just listen to the pops,
he's a
man.
master.
Just listen to the
man.
pops. Yeah.
And when he does the big fire, and this credit Bam Bam for some of his bumps on those punches. Oh my goodness. Incredible stuff. So there's a lot to like here. Alex, what did you make of Bam Bam and Lawler?
It's one of my notes. Both of them, the punches. I mean, Lawler, I'm not telling breaking news here, has one of the greatest working punches of all time. And the way both of them sell some of them are just fantastic. My first note is, who's the goof? Who was the guy breakdancing on the outside of the ring? Did you say that was Bill Dundee?
Was he breakdancing?
They introduced him. They said his name was like Kenny something, and he like is breakdancing and then does a kip up.
Maybe it wasn't Bill Dundee because like sometimes
they did say Kenny.
You can't hear the house mic sometimes.
It also should be noted that this video does not exist in HD. I'm going to put it that way.
Right.
There's no 4K Criterion version of it.
No.
I had to double check the date on this. This is late '86, so we're not dabbling with Hulkamania anymore. And Lawler's out there in red and yellow, and Terry's
brother.
somewhere on the horn, putting out a hit on Jerry Lawler. Yeah, there's a really good, like, Bam Bam is like wearing his gym clothes, but it's still, he's very intimidating looking. And there's the long sequence of him beating up Lawler, because Lawler, like, people like Cornette have, and people from that era, it's always Ricky Morton. They talk about like the sympathy Ricky Morton can get for selling. Lawler, like, when he would do that thing where he'd grab the side of his head and like look at the crowd and like the way people would get behind him. Oh, again, Jerry Lawler, he's a Browns fan, which is easily the worst thing about him. But he was a great pro wrestler. I love the TV presentation. I assume we all watch this on YouTube. How it has the little, whatever the fucking station is, WBGAN or something,
Yep.
and then every time they do a commercial break, the guy's like, "While there's a break in the action, we're going to take a break of our own. We'll be back with more wrestling." Good juice. I realize I listen to Laps Fan too much, because when Lance Russell says, "Bam Bam working on those ribs," I immediately thought, and those weren't the only ribs he was working on that night. I love cheating in no disqualification matches. It's like, you don't see it that much, but like just blatant. There's that part he has the chokehold on. He's got his feet on the ropes, and it's like the rest just like, he can't do anything about it. And I always think that's, if you can cheat, just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And it started to drag for me towards the end, but it was wrestled in a way that, like, if that was legitimately the stipulation of a fight you were having, you would just try to like wear on the guy or choke him or like do what you could to incapacitate him. And Lance Russell does at one point say, "The Bammer," and like as Lawler's working offense on him or something. And then the chair shot at the end, it wasn't like a Balls Mahoney chair shot that satisfied me in a sickening way, but it looked so awesome how the chair like exploded on his head and like the crowd went nuts. I did not realize this was like his legitimate rookie year, and that is, you should not be, especially as a big man, that good within your first 12 months of being a professional wrestler.
It's insane. We should note that the video starts also with Bam Bam hitting his cartwheel, which is like the funniest possible way to kick off a Texas Death Match. Like Jerry just standing there watching this big man do a cartwheel. I have to mention this. I'll do this now and get out of the way. You mentioned Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette explained that he thinks it hurt Bam Bam when he got the Flames look, because they made him look like a superhero rather than just looking like a tough guy as he did here in Memphis. And I have to say that after revisiting this footage, I think that is probably the worst opinion in the history of professional wrestling. I'm convinced of it.
There's that story of George Steele when he got to TV one time before they debuted Bam Bam on WWF, and they were filming vignettes of him. And George Steele looked at him and said, like, "Well, this is the death of the business." He's like, "Look at that goof over there. His head's tattooed and he's wearing flames." And like, it's so, people think I have antiquated views, and that was obviously 40 years ago, but it is funny. And that is, especially for Cornette, who was that psychopath he pushed as like the big Johnny K9? What was his name? Like,
I think it was Bedlam.
Bruiser Bedlam.
Bruiser Bedlam, yeah.
And Cornette always just has a giant chub for big guys, and it's like, we just already talked about. Look at Bam Bam Bigelow. There's no one ever who's aesthetically looked more like a pro wrestler than that guy.
Like, imagine Bam Bam's. Sorry, I just Bob's picture. No. Imagine how much money Bama's fucking royalties have been boosted by. Like, his family's still getting those action figure checks and those video.
Yeah.
God bless, the way it should be. But it's just, I don't know. Because I remember him saying that a while back and being like, "That's a strange." And I saw him here and I thought, "Come on, man!" Like, as if this was the look that he should have stuck with. But anyway.
Yeah,
he looked like a wrestling fan in the crowd there. Like
it was. Yeah,
I mean,
it's
tougher than
insane.
most wrestling fans in the crowd, but still, like,
this was not this look. This look would not have stuck with the test of time and made him an iconic figure. But nonetheless, everyone knows how great Lawler's selling is. I have to say, I was not prepared for the bumps he took on those initial Bam Bam bills. And I don't know if Bam Bam was just throwing him, but he was flying through the air. It was quite incredible. There's so much here. The stipulation kind of elongates in a way that makes it a slight drag by the end, as Alex mentioned. The finish is peak Memphis in that you flip him babyface and basically undo everything in order to restart, which is real graps. But it's great. I mean, there are pieces here and flashes here that are about as good as David vs. Goliath wrestling gets, right? I mean, it's just every moment and every kind of momentum shift counts. So I love the match. It makes for a fascinating watch from the Bam Bam perspective because you kind of look at this and go, man, again, great career, but this could have been a whole different thing, right? This could have been a whole other story, I feel like, if things go differently. And that quite naturally transitions us to just over a year later, our second match, Survivor Series 1987. What a time.
Fucking blast with this match.
Indeed. Let's run down the teams here. So we have the heel lineup of Andre, Bundy, Butch Reed, One Man Gang, and Ravishing Rick Rude. Opposite the babyface team of Hulk Hogan, King Kong Bundy, Dom Rock, Ken Patera, who is extraordinary here in Porndorf. This is the original Survivor Series main event. And Bam Bam came in. I did the research. I think he came in 3 months prior to this. Famously, they did the angle where they had all the managers vying for him, and he picked Humperdinck, the babyface manager, which is a great bit. He's so over in this match, and he's been there for 3 months. I did some. Okay, look, before we go any further,
I had a quick question for the Oracle here. Because my immediate thought was, I had seen this before, but never analytically or actually like trying to process everything at the time. I immediately let out a laugh. I was like, how the fuck did Morocco get this booking? And when he's on the way to the ring, they say he replaced Superstar Billy Graham. Why the fuck was Superstar Billy Graham supposed to be in this? Was he
Superstar Graham made a comeback in '87? But
was
then
he doing? Was that when he was doing like the mustache karate guy comeback? Oh my god!
Oh shit!
Yeah, remember he was doing commentary on Superstars and shit, and then he at some point he maybe he got hurt, but I know eventually there was a dispute. Maybe that was in '88 where the dispute happened and he quit and left. I can't remember.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure.
Yeah, Morocco, much like all of Hulk's team, like if you poked him with a pin, they would have.
Oh yeah, Dr. Zahorian was fucking making bank,
working overtime.
It's worth noting too before we get into this. Vader worked. I didn't realize before today that Vader worked New Japan before this. I always thought that was post WWF. He worked New Japan before this too. Like
Vader?
He was there. Sorry, Bam Bam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll get to Vader, but Bam Bam he worked Japan before he even made the Fed jump. It's like he was there as like 18 months in his career. It's insane.
I said earlier that 4 was his debut. Obviously, it wasn't, but he was at WrestleMania 4.
He was at 4. Yeah.
Yeah, he lost to One Man Gang in like 3 minutes in that glorious title tournament.
That was when his like knees were banged up, right? And he had like the whole run kind of falls apart, and we'll get into that. But before we do, this is a moment in time, a quite magical snapshot of the golden era, the golden age of the World Wrestling Federation. After doing some research, found out this has like a 6.6 or something on Cage Match and a 3.5 from Dave in 1987. And I think this is like kind of a lost classic, and no one really talks about how fucking awesome it is. And I think that's a horrible shame. And I'm pretty sure it's just because there's so many big men in the match, people just assumed it must be bad. The pace of this match until the very last leg is unbelievable considering the wrestling talent involved. It's constantly rotating. It's perfectly this thing's electric, man. The atmosphere for this too. Oh my goodness. Alex, you messaged us about this earlier about that initial babyface shine where they're all rolling, all 5 babyfaces.
It's insane.
It's unbelievable. Tell us what you thought of this. And I just love this match. Go ahead.
I think anyone's immediate instinct, and which is usually right, is that any Andre match after like 84 is bad. I think anyone people, and he's struggling when he tries to pull himself up on the rope there in the beginning. But we get an absolutely insane promo from Hogan's team talking Hogan's explaining that they're hunting, they're hungry, and they're going out there and they're all sweaty and screaming and just so much cocaine and steroids in the room. It's just the way it's meant to be. And you got Mean Gene holding court in the middle. Terry, dude, all right, this is obviously we'll focus on Bam Bam, but this is like this is just pure unadulterated Hogan in the sense of he takes up the entire shot during the promo, and then like some of the shit he does in the match is just like this is the lapsed Hogan is a real person. But
the line, by the way, before you go on the line, this particular line I noted, there are no rules when you're dealing with Mother Nature. There's no insurance policy. You live, you die, you survive.
And when I know they throw it to Bam Bam, he goes, "It's time to go burn the building down," and then like Hogan just like makes some face where he's like laughing and just slowly walking towards the camera, so it's just this terrifying shot of his face. Big fan of Jive Soul Bro when the heels come out. What else do I have here? The Rock is full. Rude's trunks are some of his more quizzical ones. They're like road signs. It's not really any sex appeal to it at all. I did post this on Twitter, but it is true, man. Rick Rude was a huge guy, but he looks tiny compared to like the beat that's in this match.
He looks like Pete Dunne in this match, bro. It's crazy.
Rick Rude, just like Hogan, though, to his credit, I don't know if it's because it was the first Survivor Series, if he knew like some of these guys might have outshined him, but he goes like full Japanese Terry in this. He does like the axe bomber at one point. He does the Jumbo Tsuruta flying knee.
Yes.
Like it's just nuts. And I think a part of like the insane format is this was the first one. They were still trying to like figure out what they could do with it. But yeah, dude, that initial like 5 minutes where that babyface team, it's like one of those All Japan Women tag matches or scrambles, like we're not scrambles, but it's kind of similar to what they try to do when they brought him in for the 95 one, which is like go 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 go. But this is like Hulk Hogan doing this shit, so it's like it's crazy. I told y'all there's a part where Don Morocco rolls for a tag, does a front roll, and I just like yelled like, "What the fuck?" I did laugh really hard. I can't remember who's in the ring. I think it's Orndorff and Rude. And the crowd just starts this thunderous Andre sucks chant. And he's just on the apron and he's like, like just looking from side to side. And it was a pretty funny moment. And the people, I have never seen a crowd more hungry for a pile driver. When Orndorff does like and the people are just going nuts. And it's like, they're going ape shit pretty much this entire match until you kind of bring it down there at the end. But what else do we have here? Bammers bumps like a champ. You can like, and he's bumping in a way of like no one had ever seen a guy of his size bump like that. Like I think like Andre hits him at one point. And he does like this kind of like something Jack Evans would do, where he kind of flies back, and it's like between this and the Lawler match, obviously it's evident why people like saw something in him. There is a great line on commentary where it's King Kong Bundy and Bam Bam in the ring, and Jesse says, "Well, I can tell you this, Gorilla, there's not going to be any hair pulling with these two in the ring." And it's just kind of quiet, and Gorilla's like, "Well, you're right about that, Jess." We get the momentary fucking Sasaki Kobashi where Andre and Hogan are trading chops back and forth.
I was worried about Andre there, bro.
Oh, dude, he's staggering, but he's still just like, God, he's got to earn that beer money, baby. I remembered this part from the match because the first time I saw it, I like laughed out loud when Hogan hits the outside and immediately body slams Bundy and One Man Gang back to back on the outside, and then does like the Hogan like, "Come on!" It's so good. And then because I want to circle back to Bam Bam, but like Hogan is running towards the ring before the ref's hand hits the 3 count for Andre to win it. Like he's so mad that he had to get out of there. He's got to get back out there. And Jesse fucking ethering him on commentary is so great. He's like, "He lost. He lost. He didn't win. Why is he celebrating?
It's a disgrace." And then Gorilla returns fire with, "You're looking at the greatest professional athlete in the world," which is fucking awesome.
Jesse hit him with, "Only in Cleveland would they cheer a loser." And I was just like, yes.
God, right. Terry had to have hated Jesse burying him on the
Well, Jesse was doing the thing here too that we already mentioned laps they brought up that never really resonated in my mind. Jesse would always keep that threat that he was going to challenge Hogan alive. He was at the end. He's like, Monsoon, I'm so sick of this. I may just have to come out of retirement and beat him for the title. And so that they probably could have made some money on that. But anyway, the Winged Eagle belt, because this was still the old one. Did the Winged Eagle debut at WrestleMania 4? Was that like whoever won that tournament got that? Well, Andre does the butterfly suplex. Bob already brought up Legends of Wrestling. I remember the first time I played that. Andre's finisher is a butterfly suplex. I was like, why the fuck is that his finish? But that's what he beat Hogan with on the big event or the main event, whatever they called it, and he won it here. So I guess it's the closest thing Andre ever had to a finisher, besides a bottle of Jack and a 30-pack. But Bam Bam here, man. So he's Hogan's buddy. They're doing like double team moves. They do the double big boot. And we know for the following 30 years after this, Hogan's one go-to he does is he has the friend who turns on him and then they have the match. So like it's obvious somewhere along the way that the plan was Bam Bam and Hogan, which probably would have been great. And the crowd, like I said, is reacting to him and he's doing shit that you just hadn't seen at that point. In a lot of ways you don't see anymore. And he does the come from behind with the 3-on-1, and he beats the Shawn Michaels in 2003. He is blown up by the end of this match, dude. Like Andre's like dead weighting him with that giant frying pan of his. But this is such an easy one, the Survivor Series match, and this was obviously a trope they'd use forever, that the guy they want to get over has to come from behind and face these dastardly heels. The last time they did this was that stupid fucking thing with Keith Lee where they didn't do it with heels, but they did it with Roman in a town where, no, they're going to boo Roman, so it'll be like he's the baby face. And then so when Roman wins, like actually nothing is accomplished because the good guy won anyway. So fucking morbid psychology they had with that guy. Very good. This is like the 88 Survivor Series is a bit of a train wreck, and like there would be varying degrees of like when we got to like 89, 90, 91, that era, it was a lot of like the guys treated this as a night off pay-per-view, like kind of taking it easy. But like we just talked about, and I've obviously waxed poetic for minutes about this. This has a torrid pace and tells a fascinating story, and for our subject of the day, puts such context on like what they thought he was going to be. It's an interesting thing to contemplate too. If he had stuck around, like he probably would have won the Royal Rumble, the first one.
Yeah, man. You watched the Dark Side. It kind of suggested that it was the Andre match, right? The Garden, that where things kind of fell apart. Mm-hmm. And I think he's talked about having like his knees were, and Vince was doing his kind of, well, they'll be fine, that kind of deal. So it unraveled. Like he's gone well within a year after this, which is incredible looking at this here. Mm-hmm. Because this match, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's not about him, but it very much is like a bat signal as to this guy's going to be a big deal, So it's a real moment in time for him. I have to note, poor ravishing Rick Rude is the only guy. Butch Reed is gone in a minute, which means of the four guys left, he's the only one who is not like 400 and up. So and he has to do all the bumping for a while in this match, and it's like. It's incredible the effort he puts in this performance, and Jesse calls it like he's like a point guard who keeps turning the ball over. He keeps talking about how bad a night he's having, because there's no room for Rude to get offense in. Like he gets the on-door roll up, but he can't be getting offense in, brother. He's got 400 pounders that have to be doing all that part of the match. So he's incredible here. I always remember that about this match. But Oracle, what do you reckon of my read on this? This feels like something that deserves more credit, I think, for its quality. This is a hell of a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've taken not the full deep dive in the Survivor Series before, but I've seen like the first 4 or 5 or whatever. And this is one of the matches that always stands out. That and one of like the big matches with like all the tag teams or whatever. Where like there was definitely like an incredible amount of effort put into this.
Yeah.
Rude is out there looking like Ric Flair when he's like feeding to a baby face, like he he reminded me of like that super worker in a Rumble every year, who like has to take like 20 bumps. And
The
like
Rick Martel of the early years.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, man. He was getting tossed around and eating everything in this. Bam Bam was awesome in this. Like when he comes in there and like crowd super over for him. He takes his awesome everybody always talks about Rikishi's inside out bump, which is great. Bam Bam takes it like a half moonsault onto his face.
Yeah, he just kind of goes sideways. Yeah,
I think it was Bundy who gave it to him.
Yes.
So like his bumping is really underrated. He just has he has an agility about him that's like really impressive to watch. Just the way he kind of like floats in the ring almost for for guys' size. And that's definitely shown in spades here.
He's very graceful, right? Very graceful.
My one of my highlights in the match is when, one of Slick's guys, I don't remember who's all in his crew or whatever, but one of them gets pinned, and Heenan hugs Slick because Slick's all mad, and you get like a perfect shot of like Heenan hugging Slick because Slick's all upset. But man, managers.
Slick was a great character, man.
Oh yeah,
awesome. Sidebar, but yeah.
But yeah, good stuff at the end. Bam Bam and Andre was a program that was felt like a big deal, and of course Andre gets to win at the end. But yeah, this was really good stuff. It was mostly like the pace they worked. It kind of really reminded me of like the New Japan elimination tags. Just in terms of the pace, the work wasn't quite as good because I've always said those are the best matches ever, in my opinion, those New Japan tags from the 80s. But just the way that they work, I mean, like, you would not think that, like, Rock and Wrestling, peak Hogan era WWF, you'd have guys out there, Hogan doing the fucking running knee, as Alex pointed out. That, like what the hell? Like, they were, but that shows it's the very first Survivor Series, and it was a show that didn't this go up against Starrcade '87?
Yeah, because that was the motivation for Survivor Series, I think, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I've been told through WWE's documentaries that it was to capitalize on the popularity of Andre and Hogan.
Oh, sure.
True. I didn't think about it like that. Yeah.
I forgot this too. It was at the Richfield Coliseum, home of Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner. That was.
Brother, that is a house they have in there for that, right? So that's why this show has got an incredible crowd. My goodness,
great.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there a women's Survivor Series match in this? I think I remember that being good too.
There is. It is pretty good. It's like it's Glamour Girls. Oh God, I can't remember who's all in it.
Jumping Bomb Angel's in there.
Is Alexa Bliss in this one, or?
Hold on. Fabulous Moolah is in the match. Canceled.
Well, there you go. Win some, you lose some. We have to be fair as well. We're focused a minute. As much as it does slow down at the end, Bundy and One Man Gang worked their arse off in this match.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, this is probably the hardest Bundy works, like, post World Class Championship Wrestling, like, ever.
He's like really truly selling like his leg and shit when Bam Bam's working on it. So yeah, I thought the same thing because I always think of WF Bundy as just kind of like, where's my check? But it's a good effort. This might I don't really have Bischoff, Team Bischoff versus Team Austin is the best Survivor Series tag match. But like this
the
immediately
Dolph one is good, Alex. I'm not doing a bit. The Dolph one is great.
I've never rewatched it because it's almost an hour, but everyone puts the Raw SmackDown one from 2016 up there too.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
But,
well, you were at the Authority one with Dolph, right?
I was,
with Sting.
Made me think that Dolph was finally going to be top guy there.
Well.
Just a bit outside.
It's overshadowed because of the Bischoff Austin one, but if you're ever bored and need to kill 10 minutes, the Team Lesnar versus Team Angle from 03 fucking rules.
I don't even know if I've seen that. That's interesting. I may have to explore this. Bobby, what did you think of the original Survivor Series main event?
I thought it was a ton of fun, basically just echoing everything you guys have said. You go into it kind of thinking they're going to do Hogan and Andre again, and then you get a little bit of it, and they use the spot to give Bam Bam some rub instead. And yeah, kind of like you guys are talking about, like it showed what their kind of plans were for him. It's a bummer it didn't work out. I didn't even know he was had this first little WWF run until a few years ago. So like it's short, it's like a year, like you talked about, but like there's some good stuff here. I want to maybe watch the actual Andre match because he had to come up in the dark side of the ring. So like maybe see what went wrong or whatever. But
I'd imagine a few things did.
No, yeah. I mean, but yeah, it was good though. It was a really good main event for the first show, and you could tell that everyone was working hard.
They really were. This crowd was electric, and they kept feeding them, man. It's a hoot, honestly. If you've never seen, I know everyone watches these grapplers differently, and some folks watch the matches and then watch the show, and some are just listeners to it. Watch this match. It's only like 25 to. It's not like one of the modern Survivor Series that go an hour, as Alex mentioned. It's like
it sounds like we're having fun. Like with that opening sequence is like if you've never seen it before, it's like legitimately mind blowing the shit they're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of unhinged, especially the initial part where Rude feeds all 5 guys at different points over about a minute span is absurd. So yeah, hell of a time, and
Ken
you have
Patera's
Jesse
just
and Gorilla.
All right, let's slow it down here, brother.
Bless Ken. He's in there. He's trying his best. All right, let's kind of group this block of time together and throw out any other matches from this act. And again, it's a little bit different with the way we're doing this here, but like, we'll say the late 80s, basically. Any other match, I think the Barry Windham match has to be called out, right, from Starrcade, the following year's Starrcade, where he comes in and that match is a real fun time. 2 big fucking super athletes there. So that one comes to mind. Anything else from the mid to late 80s that we should call out before we move to Act 2, fellas?
He wrestled on Mania and Starrcade in the same year, and that's a big deal for those days.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, a lot of guys have done that in recent years when it comes to the house show extravaganza of Starrcade.
Yeah, I don't. Most of my match recommendations are going to come later, but like just in us talking about his run there, and like Bob talked about how short it was, but like I said, he was in the video game. He had an LJN, so there were clearly plans to do something with this guy. It's just Andre was too big of a player at the time.
It's a huge what if when you're looking at just his career, because everything we do after this doesn't exist, right? Like, if that run goes as well as I think they hoped it would go, he certainly ain't working Dr. Death in front of 500 people.
Could have been Hogan and Bammers at the first SummerSlam. Like, if it plays out the way we're talking about there.
Yeah, man. It's crazy.
Oh, man. Heel Bam Bam versus Champion Savage in 88. That would have been fucking good.
Yeah,
it's wild. And again, everything we're saying here is not far-fetched. Look how they used him here 3 months into his run. Like, it's wild. Bob, Oracle, any other matches shout? Are we good to move forward, fellas?
I'm good.
No, not this era.
All good. Okay. Before we move on, shout out to Joe, who resubscribed with us for 16 whole months. Sorry to hear that. God bless you. We appreciate it. And also, we had an anonymous gifter give out our community. So I believe it went to Willie. I think I saw him thank him in the chat. Whoever they were, I believe it probably was Bruce Pritchard, right?
Thanks, Bruce.
Probably. Yeah. Shout out to you, Bruce. We love you, right? So,
I don't have my glasses on, but that condescending thing Bruce does when he puts the glasses on the tip of his nose.
Real graps. All right. Act 2, June 9th, 1991. The aforementioned Dr. Death Steve Williams match. We head.
You talk about a moment in time, brother.
Beach Brawl was the event name, right? I believe. Since leaving the WWF in 1988, he's gone back to New Japan and kind of just floated around elsewhere.
He was in WCW briefly in 1990 as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did some stuff in WCW because I saw that he worked. Him and Scott Steiner worked like 5 house shows in that time, and I'm fascinated by these matches because, okay. Let's not even talk about the match because we have to set the table here. So, the UWF was Herb Abrams' promotion. That, how does one kind of capture this tale in a brief manner? Well, it was intended to be a challenger for the World Wrestling Federation, but there were red flags when Herb suggested that he would be using Bruiser Brody, who had previously been murdered. And I think at that point, people started to wonder if Herb was really cracked up to be playing this game. They run a set of tape. Where was the initial taping? Does anyone remember?
Didn't he have was it Vegas? Did he do like a Glow style residency there? No. It was out in LA. I think they did some.
No, that was yeah.
Let me make sure, because I remember they did.
Because he got Bruno, because Bruno's here. Oh wow, Steve Williams, the champion.
It was Reseda. It was Reseda.
Oh wow!
God bless. A young super dragon was in the crowd saying, "I can do something with this."
And the big hook was that Bruno was on board and he was the color commentator. And what a color commentator he is!
Well, because this
in
was
1991.
This was like Bruno. Anything I can do to hurt Vince, right? That era. Yeah.
Yes. Anything that isn't Vince is Real Graps era of Bruno. In early 91, they did some stuff in New York, and then Florida was next, which would play host to their first pay-per-view event that really ultimately killed the promotion. Famously, Herb told everyone that they had, promoted this event in extraordinary fashion. They'd done all these incredible things with radio and TV, and they got to the building, and there was 500 people there. Honestly, looking at this on camera, I'm not convinced there's 500 people there at this point, because this is the main event, and I think it seems people have gone home.
Looks like a 2023 Ring of Honor taping, man.
Brother, this looks like a 2020 pandemic era SmackDown. This looks insane. And the YouTube video for this has
reminds me of the warehouse I went to see wrestling in East Ridge when I was 10.
There you go. Pre-match interviews for this that are hysterical. Bam Bam Bigelow cuts probably the worst wrestling promo ever in this thing, and it's a hidden gem in the archives of great bad promos. It's unbelievably bad. When he talks about like sticking to a game plan, and he's like, "I got it. I got it. I'm gonna get him.
I stick it to the game plan."
It's so funny. And then
they do show Dr. Death murdering a man on television, like in the pre-roll. Now we're never going to talk about Beach Brawl again, so we should run down the card here. Some nobodies. Boris Zukov won the dark match before the cameras went live. Terry Gordy versus Johnny Ace in a street fight ended in a double count out in 6 minutes. The Killer Bees had a match. Rockin' Robin defeated Candy Divine in a singles match for the inaugural UWF Women's World Championship. Paul Orndorff defeated Kurtle de Beers in a strap match in 4:15. Bob Backlund defeated Ivan Koloff. That's a fucking match right there. Two of like the yesteryear WWF champions. 2 minutes and 23 seconds. And then Wet and Wild, Stevie Ray, and Sonny Beach defeated Cactus Jack and Bob Orton Jr. in 4 minutes and 2 seconds. I think Stevie Ray was the guy they showed before this that Doc just completely dropped on his head and killed.
Real. Fair.
Yeah, so that's the Dark Side of the Ring on UWF is recommended if you haven't seen it, because that's one of those they do a really good job of like a comprehensive thing, and it doesn't feel like too much is really missing from it. Absolutely. Sorry, Bob, I took over there.
This is for the UWF Sports Channel television title. It is a tournament final in a tournament that Bam Bam wasn't in, but I believe replaced someone or something. I don't know. Who cares? The point is that this show has been a disaster, and out come two of the most celebrated gaijins in wrestling history to work this house that is, again, it's not just this empty. There is no energy left in this building. If there wasn't at the start, it's gone. And away they go to work a spirited, bloody 7-minute brawl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so good. I mean, again, not a clap, but like relative to what's preceded it on this show, Bruno starts like enjoying himself. Bruno says, "Well, hold on a second. There's a damn wrestling match happening in the ring." This is why wrestling is the greatest thing in the world, because even in the worst possible scenario, some real graps may just explode out of nowhere.
It's like Jim Ross on an AEW.
Yeah, watching Joe wrestle. Before we go any further, I'm sorry if I'm talking, but there's a lot of context. But Herb Abrams is part of this match.
Oh yeah,
He's the opening spot of the match. He comes out to present the title, and Bam Bam snatches him, and then they go into Dr. Death jumps him. So there's so
Herb
much here.
tries to like adhere to the code of honor, and Bam Bam's having none of it.
I have to throw this to you first, Oracle, because if it wasn't for you, there's no way we would have done this match. You mentioned it immediately, and like when you mentioned it, I was thinking like they must have done something in Japan or something. I didn't even think about this. It didn't even cross my mind. This was the Herb Abrams fucking. I was thinking like I don't know, man. Maybe he did some shoot fighting business. I don't know what happened, but here we are. Tell us about this, Oracle. It was your call, and what a call it was. My God, what a treat.
Well, I mean, it's the best UWF match of all time.
There you go. What a feat.
And it's a legitimately great match. On the biggest show they ever did, of course, that was an absolute flop. But and it's a 7-minute brawl between those two guys. That's bloody, and they just throw fucking bombs. And it's in front of no one. It reminds me of 90% of indie shows, what they try to do nowadays. It's this shit ruled, man. And it makes it even better that it's in front of like this fucking crowd and this
100%
company with Bruno on commentary and shit. I don't know, man. Like, how many times have we seen Bammers bleed? Like that's rare. Both guys bleed. I don't know. Like they're throwing bombs and shit. Like
Dr. Death's like kneeing him in the face at one point.
Yeah,
like a minute.
Like the part, like don't they have like a crazy strike exchange at one point in the match where they're just like wailing away on one another?
Yeah. At one point, Bama like catches him in a Samoan drop and looks insane.
Ruled. I was just thinking. I was thinking. I was like, I'm pretty sure he catches him in a Samoan drop at one point. Like, and then like like Bam Bam gets his big near falls, and then like they sell just enough, but they're going just short enough to where it's not like the no selling, even if there is some of it. But like it's more believable when two big guys are just throwing shit at each other and beating the hell out of each other. And of course, Williams gets the big win at the end, and we're supposed to care about this title, but like at the same time, you're like, oh man, that match fucking ruled. Like, why was that match that good? Like, could you imagine how good and like how memorable this match would have been if they did this shit on like WCW TV at the same time?
Bro, imagine this in Japan.
Yeah.
Like,
imagine this in Japan. Imagine the crowd reaction for this exact match in Japan.
It's a perfect like
just
big
Inoki at ringside, the single tear going down his eye.
It is wild.
Yeah, it's the perfect big man bomb fest. Like it's one of the more. It's probably Bam Bam's most underrated match, honestly.
Yeah, I definitely
legitimately really good, and it's a style he should have been working a lot. Like throwing bombs with big dudes, like another guy that he had literally like ran neck and neck with his entire career, Boss Man. Ray Trailer. Like imagine he and Boss Man having a match like this, like where they're just throwing bombs for 8 minutes. He and Vader,
They do have a pretty fun match at the Rumble '93.
That's true. They do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've seen that. That sounds fun. I didn't know they overlap. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm with you completely.
It's last match before he jumps.
Well, that makes sense.
Yep.
Before he becomes the boss.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a big bubba right there, baby.
Yeah, I'm with you. This style should have been way more common in Bam Bam's career. I feel like this is and it's even at this runtime, if they went any longer, it would have been stretching it to its limits because it is literally just the raw ingredients of them whacking each other. But it's an absolute hoot, and hearing Bruno get excited, very, very, just what a treat. What a time to be alive. They like start sprinkling in sports style presentation, which is fucking amazing considering it started with Herb Abrams going out with a belt. But anyway, Bobby, I'm intrigued as to your knowledge of this incredible promotion, and then beyond that, what you thought of the match.
Yeah, I've seen the Dark Side of the Ring. That's kind of the most like comprehensive thing I've seen about it. They had some bright ambitions, just didn't really play out the way that they wanted it to. This match ruled though. Just a really fun sprint. There's blood. There was Bam Bam, that one clothesline cell where he almost does a flip. I always enjoy that, especially when a guy that big. Just a ton of fun, man. And I mean, it was short, but they kept it action packed, and that's always going to work for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, pretty much perfect for this pairing. Alex, co-sign from you, mate. What do you reckon?
In about 16 months or so, when AEW's on their deathbed, I need Bob to recite that exact thing verbatim. It had some big aspirations. It just didn't work out for him. Speaking of AEW, Herb Abrams here, about 27 inches taller than John Silver. I'm never going to let that go, dude. Being at that pay-per-view, I turned to Joe and Matt, and I'm like, Adam Cole's a foot taller than this bald fuck. Like, what? So any dig I can get in now, I definitely will. Yeah, it's funny. This is one of the Oracle picks. It seems like almost every episode he'll throw something out that will just be like, And so watching it on YouTube, which it's a pretty good version of it too.
Yeah.
Dude, peak wrestling comedy is showing Bruno in a tuxedo at commentary with no one behind him in the audience, and he's just, we're here for the title match. Someone I have in my note here, sweet roll, and I wasn't eating at the time, so I think Bammers does like a really cool front roll to get out of something, because as we talk about, he's got good offense. Doc, as always, murders him with that clothesline. Somehow not the most vicious clothesline Bam Bam takes in the matches that we're doing, but still one regardless. I have a note that Jim Ross was coming in his pants watching this match somewhere. Can you imagine him calling this match? The big stringy grizzly bear taking on the all-time lineman from the University of Oklahoma. This is the one that has Bam Bam doing the splash, just like that Bronson Reed fella does these days. And then the closing sequence is basically just Doc like deadlifting him and throwing him around. And it's, Dr. Death is, you want to talk about what if careers? Obviously things worked out pretty well for him in some aspects, but like, you imagine him like, this is 91, right? And so like Warrior's still on top now. Imagine if they just like brought Dr. Death into WWF and just had him like working Savage, and none of those guys. That's the whole thing about like Cornette's insane theory that he was going to be a main eventer in '98. None of those guys would have ever done Dr. Death's matches.
No.
None of them. Not in the '91 era, and especially not in '98. I hope the people didn't come to see Stone Cold get dropped on his head by goddamn Dr. Death. And so like, so it wasn't going to happen. But you watch this and you just think of like, you imagine if WWF picked this guy up and like at WrestleMania 7, he's throwing Kurt Hennig around the ring, like, and just dropping him on his head. Like, people would be like, fuck it, have this guy beat Slaughter. This is the guy we want. A lot of fun. Absolutely no reason both of these guys should blade for this show, but they do it for the love of the industry. We love them because of that. The power slam on the win looks excellent too, because it's very like labored, and it's like, it looks like, this is all I've got left, so this is what's going to win it. And then afterwards we get of all the good things Dr. Death could do, promos were never really one of them. But that's the thing of like, in Japan, they love that him stomping his feet and just yelling, but like, it seems kind of silly. And he was like calling out bouncers, and he's like, I don't care if you run track, just sign the dotted line. And it's a kind of unhinged way to go out, but it's UWF, so it's very in tone with what we're doing.
Absolutely. I had a similar thought to you about WWF Dr. Death marriage, because one of the comments on this video was, imagine if in 95 Dr. Death went to the World Wrestling Federation to wrestle Brett. Oh. And I did that wrestling fan thing, like I read it, popped, and was like, that'd be cool. And then I just thought to myself, imagine how much Brett would hate wrestling Dr. Death, Look, like working the loop,
dude,
getting the shit kicked out of him.
It's already in my head. Brett goes to do the bulldog. Doc does the backdrop driver to counter out of it. And then
they never wrestle again.
Brett would he would go for the Oklahoma Stampede, and like Brett would somehow counter into the sharpshooter. Yeah, it's like the Sting Taker thing. I've always had these fantasy book spots in my head, but yeah, it'd be awesome. But again, you're exactly right. Brett would just be like, "Nope,
Yeah,
you're gonna do what I want you to do." Imagine like Doc trying to tell Hogan what his match is gonna be. Vince, get in here, dude.
There we go. We jump ahead a year now. We go to June 26th, 1992. New Japan Pro Wrestling. The greatest possible wrestling aesthetic of all time on display here with that mat and these wrestlers. It does not get any better. Here we have Bam opposite, or alongside, I should say, Big Van Vader, opposite the Steiners. Now, just to kind of quickly, so the deal with Vader and Bam Bam was they worked like a couple singles matches in the late 80s, and they did like the no contest double count out thing, and then they formed their alliance, and they'd kind of been teaming for a little bit at this point. This particular era is like their most famed as a team, I think it's fair to say, because this is when they did the matches with Muto and Hiroshi Hase, right? I think is the famous matches, Oracle. Maybe you can. Is that 92 or is that 91? Am I making it up?
92.
Yeah, it's in this range, right? This is their times as a team that people most remember. Just for some perspective, we're just about Dr. Death. The Steiners, at the exact moment of this match, stateside are doing a program with Miracle Violence Connection, which is like kind of mind-melting to think about, right? It kind of doesn't make any sense, those timelines being aligned. But here they are in New Japan, and the atmosphere for this is like euphoric. This is as good as it gets. I posted a clip on Twitter of Bama and Vader when they do the run, and the place is like electric for this, and they do a high five, and the place comes up. It's just amazing vibes here before we even get to the match. The match is exactly what you'd expect it to be, for good, bad, and everything in between. But man, did I have fun with this. Bobby, what did you make of this New Japan?
No, this was a hell of a time when this popped up. Like, I knew I was going to enjoy it, obviously, given the four guys and, the style of match it was going to be, and it was exactly like it was going to be. Every time I see the Steiners, like, before WWF, I always kind of forget that Rick was, like, the good one for quite some time, because I'm more familiar with Scott. Yeah, I'm more familiar with Scott, from when I started watching. So, yeah, every time I see something like this, it's like, well, Rick could really go. But, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. The crowd added to it a whole bunch. Four guys that I'm very into as wrestlers, and just a great time.
Absolutely. What do you think the clothesline count was on this one, Oracle? What do you we got up to? 25, 30?
Even in doubt. It was pretty high. There was at least a dozen of them, right? Like, I'm not even kidding. It was
wild.
A dozen.
What did you think of this one, mate? Go for it.
This was just atmosphere, and just like a bunch of guys throwing bombs, man. Like, anytime you see a Steiner's tag from like New Japan, in the 90s, you're going to see awesome shit, but especially when you couple it with Bam Bam and Vader on the other side. And the spots that always stuck out to me are like Scotty in there and like killing. Was it Vader that he murdered with the Frankenstein at one point?
Yes. Oh my God, that was unbelievable
with that thing, man.
Yeah.
Vader like literally tombstones himself on his head.
You think that was payback for the power bomb that Vader dished, where he just like fucking just dumped him on his head in the heat segment and just like dropped it?
Very, very well could have been. Very well could have been. There's plenty of receipts, in Steiner's tags. But this was a ton of fun, man. Definitely kind of a weird match when you think about it, because like, as you pointed out, they're wrestling Bam Bam and Vader in Japan, and they're wrestling Doc and Gordy in the States. That's nuts. Like, literally in the same summer. Same week even, because didn't Beach Blast happen on June 20th? It's 6 days later. Yeah, that's nuts, man.
That match is a little more dangerous than this one in terms of just like receipts and who's got a bigger dick.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun. It was just like, it's not necessarily something that's like much different from the other stuff you see, but it's like the floor is very high with these matches. Like, you're gonna see the Steiners and Vader and Bam Bam fucking like stiff each other and drop each other on their heads, and like crowd is super into it. Yeah, this is absolutely our type of jam, I think. So this was definitely worthwhile.
This is not the match to discuss, structure and theme.
Correct.
It's
You don't
just
want
big fellas whacking each
structure.
other.
Fucking Steiners, man.
It's the Steiners were the ultimate meathead tag team, right? And that's that was the deal. And I don't think this is necessarily a great professional wrestling match in the traditional conventional sense. But God almighty, this is a who you can watch this over and over and have fun with it. Why when Scott climbs the top rope and just falls down and Tokyo gasps
I literally
in
burst
horror
out laughing when that happened.
because he falls in the most Scott Steiner fashion possible too. Right? He doesn't just fall down. He goes left, right, goes kind of walks the ropes at one point. It's amazing. So many little, kind of grins within this one. Alex, what did you make of it, mate?
Yeah, I stepped out to the men's room, so I apologize if I repeat anything y'all called out. We were talking about, Bob, you ever seen that Beach Blast match, the Miracle Violence Connection against the Steiners?
The 92, yes. I think I have. It's been a while, but I did watch a show once, like in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, that seems incredibly up your alley. The first thing that happens is Gordy drops Rick Steiner on his head. It's just wonderful. All right, so as Joe and I always do when we talk about this era, we talked about it on our Stan Hansen episode and our Terry Funk episode, but like the cinematic presentation of New Japan in the 70s through the 80s and bled into the early 90s is the presentation of wrestling here is unparalleled. Yes. I don't need a bunch of fucking LED screens and boards. As much as I love, especially like this year's WrestleMania stage, like how it was like the Oscars red carpet, it's fucking amazing. But this where it shows Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader backstage getting ready to defend their titles, and they just kind of look at each other and nod their heads, and we follow them just through the double doors out into the crowd, and then the crowd just grows, and then it's that slow fade to the Steiners in the ring. It's just unbelievable. What was Takada's promotion? UWFI, was that the name of it?
Yes.
That also added the national anthem thing, which was like for a boxing nerd like me, took it to the next level. But anyway, man, the aura the Steiners project here is unreal. And the thing is, for just as far as the match goes, it's fascinating to me is Bam Bam works like the plucky little guy because he lets Vader do all the big boy shit. But yeah, just like the simple things, but like when the Steiners regroup, quicker than the champs are expecting, and they both get on the top rope and do the double clothesline. It's just like so fucking good. Rick absolutely throws Vader at one point. Like it's supposed to be, I think, like a back body drop or something, but he like gets under Leon and throws him like a quarter across the ring, and then immediately German suplexes him.
Scott tried similar. Do you see when Scott tried to belly Bam Bam and they just kind of fell down? Bam must have was like, nah, bro, we ain't going there.
Some of these spots too, this ring was like extra bouncy, makes it sound fake because that ring looks harder than Portland cement. But like Vader like suplexes Scott at some point, and he bounces like a good 8 inches off the mat. It's fucking crazy. Rick hits one of the hardest clotheslines I've ever seen in my life on Bam Bam at one point. Of like Bam Bam tries to do that thing we talked about where he does that kind of like quarter turn cell, and he starts to, but he hits him so hard that he just like goes into the mat immediately on his face. It's so fucking good. The Frankensteiner is unreal. Who did the double underhook backbreaker? Was that Bammers?
Yeah.
Okay, because I remember watching that. I'd seen this match before. I forgot about that because I always associate that move with Chris Jericho. Because I remember in WCW he did that, and then disgraced former professional wrestler CM Punk did that move as well and called it "Welcome to Chicago, motherfucker."
We'll get to him next month. Don't bury our high spots.
Ooh,
we'll get to him in January.
Look in his eyes. Yeah, I mean, you guys have covered a lot of like the high points here, but Vader does a twisting splash at one point. Like Scott's kind of out of position, so hits him that way. A ref bump in Japan, you can tell the crowd's just kind of like, okay, because that's not par for the course there. But anyway, the main takeaway from this, and boys, we've had a few episodes where this has been a takeaway with our Goldberg episode and also our Lex Luger episode. Scott Steiner is one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. I think, I mean that genuinely. Like, he's not my top 5, but he'd be up there because he vertical suplexes Vader from the ring apron into the ring, and before he does it, he looks at the crowd, and then brings him in, and then gets up and just like when he gets so hyped, he'll just let out like a random fuck. He'll be like fuck, and like get really excited. And I mean, we fawned over the Goldberg match, and then obviously Steiner's against Sting and Luger is one of the greatest tag matches of all time, and a big part of that is how fucking awesome he is. Rick Steiner was obviously very good and like fundamental to the tag team. You needed 2 guys to dump dudes on their heads and whatnot, but like Scott, like when he falls off the rope too, he's just such a chaotic wrestler, and that it sucks that people only know from when he came in to lose to Triple H and after that. And even in TNA, he did some fun stuff and had some like entertaining promos, but like it wasn't just this either. 2000 Scott Steiner was a shoot god, like the way he was projected, and he was the last star of WCW.
Coming out with a fucking tiger and shit.
Yeah,
that ruled.
Medeja, and just like looked unreal. And you watch stuff like this though, and it's just like, even when he botches, he's such a chaotic wrestler that it works. And it's not in that fun way of like, I'm blanking, but I know there's wrestlers today that fucking suck, and like Alley Cat, and people are like, oh, it's part of their charm is that they're not really good, and that doesn't work there. But when you have this giant jacked up hoss who's just like, his goal is to terminate who he's wrestling, when he trips and falls, it's like, yeah, that's probably something a dude who's coked up like that would do. And so Scott Steiner is incredible. This match is a lot of fun. Honestly, it's probably cooler on paper than an execution. Like, just reading the names involved, it's like, holy shit, it's like a video game match. It's a lot of fun though, and like you said, it's not Invaders like upper echelon of Japanese work or anything like that, but like it's worth checking out, especially just the feel of it is kind of bigger than the match itself. Yeah.
From a Bam Bam perspective, his feed on Rick's hot tag, Scott's hot tag, I believe, is incredible. Like when he meets him in the middle, it's unbelievable for a big man to feed like that. Also the top rope, the spot where he catches Rick and drops him on the top rope. The Steve Austin slingshot, whatever it's called. That's a wonderful momentum shift. Like, there we go. I didn't want to do a Carl Anderson bit inadvertently, so I was hesitant. I will say, Vader and Bam Bam make for a fascinating comparison in that, like, based on everything we know, I think we can be confident that Bam Bam would have probably beat the shit out of Vader if it really got to it. But as a professional wrestler, inexplicably, I feel like Vader has actual more intimidation factor here than Bam Bam, and it shows in the match because Bam is like, as you mentioned, he's like the plucky one of the two. Is that what do you think, fellas? Am I on the same with that? Like, Bam Bam is obviously intimidating. He's got fucking head tattoo.
I don't know what big boy tag teams we have anymore, but like someone needs to do that shit when they got in the ring and we're running the crossroads, like that the crisscross is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Crossroads for my daughter Cody. But that's just such a cool fucking like fuck yeah, big guys type thing. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, Vader has one of the most intimidating presences in wrestling history, especially like the only thing I was missing here was the big headdress, because that was like the coup de grace.
Absolutely. Great question here. We have to answer before we move on. Which of these teams would you prefer to face 2023 FTR? Many issues emerge, I feel, when we do this, because I think based on the way the Steiners work the Midnight Express, we can talk ourselves into the idea they would have like, these guys are going to make us look good. We won't just beat the fuck out of them. Leon isn't. I don't think he's selling Dax's chop, brother.
No.
I think that one's going to be pretty short. They're not the tallest fellas.
Just get
FTR,
him in the corner.
Steiners match would be good, right? Are we more confident on that? I think I'm confident.
It depends on what night of the week you caught him.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, there's a potential, like, with how erratic they were with their work, FTR like lays out this amazing match to them, and they're just like, nope, we're gonna suplex you around for a while.
Yeah, there's definitely a world in which Dax, he frustrates Scott Steiner in a way that changes the matches, I feel. But, we'll never know. It's a great question nonetheless. I love it.
Could you imagine Cash pumping on those duplexes, though?
That's the thing. I think the Steiner matches work because I think FTR would basically play the Midnight Express, right? That's what they're doing. And they always like working with them. So,
what about this one, Joe? You got early 90s Bammers against modern Dax in a singles match to main event a Collision.
Well, are we talking a small house, quiet crowd? Is that what we're talking? Knife edge chop, brainbuster?
Yeah. Giving Bammers a good pile driver. And then
a pile driver. Oh, yeah. I'm looking at a four.
Bammer hits his DDT,
It would have to. Yeah. And then, like, doesn't Dax do the flying headbutt sometimes?
He does.
So he would get, too big for his britches and try that on Bam Bam, and Bam Bam would move and hit the moonsault.
He'd, like, hook the sharpshooter at one point, and Bam would just, like, push his legs, and Dax would take a big bump.
And they would do the thing where they tried to do the King of the Ring Brett finish where he victory rolled Bam Bam, but Bam Bam countered it, like, or it slid it into the greetings from Asbury Park. I mean, come on. Tony Khan, why don't you have us hired?
The greatest finisher name of all time.
Yes. Absolutely fair. And it gets in our last match this evening.
Yes,
the perfect way to end. Yes.
All right, there we go. Okay, let's put a bow on Act 2. Any other matches to call out? I mentioned the Muto tags, Brett matches, right? Because we'll kind of do the mid-90s with this because I think that makes most sense.
Yeah.
The Brett matches that Bob called out earlier, we have to show love to the Lawrence Taylor effort because
absolutely,
my God, that's an incredible effort on Bam Bam's part, even if it's not like a Mac classic, of course. Any other matches from this block of time?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to condense this as much because it's not a match we did. LT holds his own as well as any other celebrity that wrestled a match did. I think, like, and even people, I think Mayweather is usually the go-to as like the best actual celebrity match, but there's a lot of fucking smoke and mirrors in that, and where like LT and Bam Bam
and shit,
yeah, he tries to powerbomb him, and it kind of looks cool because he can't do it, and he has to wrestle like a real 9-minute match or whatever. And say what you will, there's a reason Vince picked Bam Bam for that. One, he knew it was going to get like media attention, and like we said, no one looks more like a pro wrestler than Bam Bam Bigelow. And then two, the trust it took. And yeah, he lost to a guy who wrestled one match, but he main evented a WrestleMania. There's less than 50 people that have lived that can say that. And so it's if you've never seen it and have some like preconceived notion that it's bad because it's not a wrestler in it, it's really good. LT holds his own, and Bam Bam hilariously like does his offense, but protects him to like almost a comical degree.
To that point, we've been doing the Vader comparison a lot, but like genuinely, Vader never could have had that match. He never could have had the match. And it's like that does kind of capture the idea I brought up earlier about there are different pieces to this, right? Like while Vader is a more decorated great in terms of match quality, there's a lot of things Bama could do that Vader could never have done, and that's an example of one. So, yeah.
Outside of that, mention the Brett matches. There is a dark match that's now available. It might be on YouTube, where Bammers wrestles Taker, and I think it might be the only match they ever had. And but it's still like full on gray hat Taker, so it's like full entrenched and he wrestles like a zombie, and it's fun. And then the other one is just for this match on paper. It's okay, but it's the team of Atsushi Onita, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Genichihiro Tenryu against the Warlord, Vampiro, and Chris Jericho.
War.
Yeah.
Jesus. That's incredible. I'm throwing up the bat signal for a couple matches here that I haven't seen, but I would like to know if there's tape. You mentioned Tenryu. Tenryu and The Undertaker versus Bam Bam Bigelow and Yokozuna.
Yes.
Yokohama, Japan.
I
don't
know
if
this
this exists.
on YouTube.
Yeah. Exists? Is out there?
I believe that's the match I saw.
Okay. In addition, the Steiner brothers versus Bam Bam Bigelow and Yokozuna, which sounds like an insane alternate of the match we just watched, which is a Dirty Biff House show match. So yeah, there's a couple that I haven't seen that I'm intrigued by. But Oracle, this act, any matches come on, mate?
Didn't we do the Owen match for the Owen Grin Grappler? Didn't we do an Owen Grin Grappler?
Owen Hart, no.
No, we didn't know. Thank you, Alex.
No.
I'm old.
No, I didn't know either.
But
we've covered a lot of ground for sure. Yeah.
He has a good match with Owen on Superstars from like 93 or 94.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oh God, this Timaru tag really exists. This is going to be reviewed as soon as we're done with our 8-hour post show.
But I don't know.
It's fine. I mean, I don't think that segment of this show is going to be as long as it is other times, right? As we mentioned, he's not a guy with an extensive catalogue. Yeah, that match actually exists on YouTube. God bless. What a time to be alive. All right.
Oh, the Bam Bam and Boss Man one from 93 Rumble.
Yeah.
There you go. Act 3. We head to the land of extreme, fellas. ECW, Hardcore TV, April 1998, the television title on the line, physical media on display.
Yeah.
Bama is the world's television champion. He won the belt a month prior. I think he's already made like 7 defenses because that's what wrestling was all about. This, of course, is a famous match for a few reasons, but I think the main one being that it set the stage for a title reign that would kind of define RVD, right? Like, and is still often cited. So we'll get there, but this is fascinating contrast in every which way to what we'd seen to this point, and it's wild. Obviously, we've kind of talked around it, but just to kind of fill in the gap, the time in between here, most of it was spent in the WWF, right? We didn't do any matches from that run, but we just referenced a couple that stand out. And he leaves that with increased star power, right? And he's a big deal for ECW. Alex, go, mate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was just one of these things I was thinking about. We talked about like the timing of his career and everything. He loses to LT, and the legend is it was under the predication that you're going to get the big push, and you'll be wrestling for the title. Some people even said as much as he'd win the title at SummerSlam. But all that happens over the summer is he becomes 1987 Bam Bam again, where he's just Hogan's buddy, but it's Diesel instead, and he's like one of them in your house is Oracle, right? It's a tag match that they made event with Bammer and Diesel, and then it all goes up in smoke. He's not even on SummerSlam that year. And then they're like, all right, you're gone. You're on your way out. So you need to put over this Gold Dust guy on your way out. And at the Survivor Series in 1995 in Washington, D.C., I think it was like on one of the first episodes we did, Joe, you and I both agreed that comedy and wrestling 90% of the time, 95% of the time is not funny. At that Survivor Series, they did something that was very funny. They had the Bill Clinton impersonator who was there because he's taking the night off to come watch Survivor Series. And when Bam Bam came out, he was doing his entrance in the background while Todd Pettingale's interviewing Bill Clinton. And Bam Bam gets in the ring and like puts his arms up and it timed with his pyro. And the Secret Service guys tackle the Bill Clinton impersonator and they're like, "Get the president down!" That's actually funny to me. But yeah, so Bam Bam left the WWF on. He left extremely acrimoniously and bounced around to Japan, and then ended up in, as you mentioned, the Paul Heyman once again came calling.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And he was a big deal from the time. There's a great interview, and it's kind of clipped. I don't have the full things out there, but Bam Bam did a shoot interview like the day after this match. So you get pretty interesting insight as to where he was at, and he does the classic wrestler thing of, "This is where I'll be for the rest of my life, brother." We're rolling, and he does talk very, very glowingly of Rob Van Dam in a way that you can tell is sincere. So you're going to add some depth to what he does here. A big moment for Rob, and he's very giving in the match. This is not the Bing Bong template when it comes to professional wrestling I enjoy, but God Almighty, it's a fun time, isn't it? I mean, this is a good party match. They brought into the crowd. There's an insane crowd dive. There's 2, but the second one is one they'd play forever and ever and ever, and it's iconic. Much going on here, Bobby, as an ECW expert. What did you make of this?
Yeah, kind of like you said, like it's a lot different from the other matches we've watched, but like the environment's fun. The match itself has a lot of good parts. The crowd dives, Bam Bam going through the table on the outside. The finish is good because I think it sets up he's facing Sabu in a couple weeks or whatever. I think they were saying on commentary.
He was supposed to, yeah. He
Yeah.
ultimately didn't.
Did they mention that that didn't seem like Joey Styles was mentioning enough times the date of the pay-per-view and what was going down.
I'm going to bring this up now, because we know we bring up this again, but the YouTube thumbnail of Shane Douglas with his fists up with Joey Styles that is titled, "Is Joey Styles the greatest announcer in the history of wrestling?" legitimately was enough for me to break my phone. I was that upset about it. I'm still upset.
One of my notes is I hate Joey Styles.
Oh my God, he's exhausting.
Yeah.
Bob, please proceed.
But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the match. The Bill Alonso whistle got annoying after a while, but it was okay.
After a while?
Daddy!
Yeah, well, immediately, but...
What about when Bam read him up for the power bomb? Rob in the crowd needed a runner, and Bam just landed on his head and about 8 chairs. Oh, real graps. I love it. Alex, what did you think of this one?
Oh man! All right. Well, little story time. I always seem to dominate these discussions, but as I had here, the ECW Path of Destruction DVD that I got, I think it was in 2000, might have been 01, but this is from Pioneer Entertainment. Shout out to Eduardo, Far From Heaven on Twitter. He's the only person I know that has the completed collection of all the Pioneer release DVDs, and because some of those were pretty hard to come by. But this, I probably watched this legitimately like 50 times when I was a teenager when I got a hold of this, and one of the matches on it is RVD and Bam Bam Bigelow. Run down the rest of the card real quick. We have the 4-way with Chris Jericho, Too Cold Scorpio, Pitbull number 2, and Shane Douglas, which that's the one where Francine turns heel and kickstarts one of the greatest main event acts of all time. Sabu versus the Sandman in the Stairway to Hell, the Taipei Death Match, Ian Rotten and Axel Rotten, Triple Threat, Jerry Lynn, Tajiri, and Super Crazy. 2 out of 3 falls, Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero, very good stuff. And then Psychosis and Rey Mysterio from 1995. And the special features, one of them is interactive menus and match access, because this is when DVDs were still very young. And my original PlayStation 2 played this DVD over and over and over and over again. It's so funny that RVD has to wrestle like the small underneath, like fighting out from the bottom little guy in this, because by modern standards, Rob Van Dam's bigger than most main eventers. And he was in the WWF, he was as big as John Cena physically, that is. And so like this is very ECW. It's walk and brawl, but then when they're actually in the ring, they do, and like they when he does that Hurricane on the outside, you mentioned, he tries it again when they get in the ring and are on the outside, and Bam Bam power bombs him on the table. Yep. And like there's an actual like story to it, but you can tell, and it's a compliment to Bam Bam from all we've gone through with him so far, is just like he just kind of figured out this is the shit they like. So he was definitely open to adapting to like the new styles and whatnot. Yeah, I do have the note about Joey Styles, Hudan Kanrana, Insugiri, all that shit. Go fuck yourself, dude. Like his commentary sucked. The dives, yeah, that's one of the first things I remember seeing of ECW was that clip of RVD doing the front flip into the crowd, and they used that until the dying day. That was like in all the TV openings and stuff. And the one he did on Balls Mahoney at Anarchy Rules 99, I think the distance was further, but the lighting was nowhere near as good, so they didn't use it as much. RVD, like we've talked about this on other ones, this is like a prime example of like he was a mid-card guy here, but you can tell the crowd's behind him 100%. He's a cool white guy, and there's so few of those to ever exist in the history of the world that like
Bob O'Neill, Rob Van Dam,
Justin Timberlake, the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
So, and it's just effortless. We joked about plenty of times of like, it's still to this day, I know bothers Triple H. He's never been able to figure out why people like RVD, and he's just cool, man. He's just kind of there, and he's got some cool ring gear, but he looks cool, and like he looks like a guy that would probably high five you and
let you take a puff,
Yeah, and his offense is like unreal. That's a huge part of it. Was like he looked so cool doing the shit that no one else was really doing, and the frog splash here, even though it's not the finish, the height he gets on it is insane. And this kickstarted his 2-year title run too. That had he not got injured, it was going to do the unification match with Mike Awesome. They were going to wrestle for the belts. And man, Oracle, can you imagine 2000 Rob Van Dam against Mike Awesome? Like,
oh fuck,
you want to
that
talk
would
about
have
a
been
match?
like right before Awesome jumped, though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so they could have. Man, thinking about it, though, if they had Awesome win, that would have been a bad decision.
That well, obviously we'll never know, but that would because
Right.
RVD.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you're 100% right. Like they were going for that match, man, and like
That should have rocked, yeah.
And
yeah, 'cause they
RVD.
did that great angle. Remember they did the great angle, or whatever, like on TV.
Yeah, where they were gonna wrestle, but then Sabu ran in to attack RVD, and
Yeah.
like, I mean, I don't think that would have been a Joey Bing Bong match either, Mike Awesome and RVD, but it would have been because RVD never won the ECW title, even when I mean, I guess he did, but anyway, fine piece of business here, ECW finish. Heyman never knew how to book like good finishes, like, and I mean that in the sense of like. He never wanted someone to really come across like they won. Like he was so into the idea of a roll up or Bam Bam literally, trips over someone here to lose. And
the story continues. We are in the 3rd inning.
That's what it is. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess, yeah. I mean, ECW did have some very famous definitive finishes, but like for the most part, it always seemed like this type of shit. But the finish, of course, is awesome because when I was 13, the Van Daminator was the coolest thing I'd ever seen a wrestler do. When they spin kicked a chair into another.
Really stupid when me and my brother, of course, he was obviously announced. He was a huge deal in 0102 when he came to the Feds. So he was me and one of me and Dustin's favorite wrestlers, and we would do we had actual chair, like the whole side story, but like. Our buddy in the neighborhood had a garage, like a huge garage that they let us wrestle. We had matches and everything, did entrances, and we would do like Dustin would do like the Rolling Thunder, and like came out to RVD's music. He would also do Whisper in the Wind off the back of their fucking old couch, which was a terrible idea. And all of us were too afraid to catch him, so we would just put laundry so we could land on it. And then, but he would always do we had like a trash can lid, like an actual shoot trash can lid, or he had like a chair. He would throw it at us, we'd catch it. He'd like do like a really shitty version of the Van Terminator, Van Terminator.
What about here when Fonzie gave him the chair and Bam just like run at him and they're just kind of like, I guess you'll sell it. I don't know. Yeah, that was an incredible deal in this one here.
There you go, Daddy.
Also, we have to note the Bam Bam bladed on his own elbow drop. We have to know that. That's very important.
I think that was like a legitimate hard way cut because if I remember correctly, this was around the time that.
My God.
Not from that. Like it might have just busted open because he starts the match with that bandage, and if it's what I'm thinking of, it was around this time he had like a triple threat with Taz and Sabu, where one of them just threw a chair like unannounced at his head and it busted him open, and so like it may have just been something that.
So I saw the deal, but because he went under the ring, right?
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, he was under the. Or could you remember this?
Vaguely.
He did the elbow and he went under the apron. So I assumed he was playing. And then he came up with Juice and they were talking about the elbow drop. And I was very confused by this wrestling physics lesson that was taken. I don't know. He was busted on it. It rolled his blood, right? God bless. But
yeah.
And I also love that because the next match we're about to cover has a classic wrestler waiting too long for someone to sneak up behind him. I just love Sabu. just throws a chair at the back of his head like he's trying to get his attention. And before I turn it over to Oracle for his thoughts, Lightning Smog had the comment of watched ECW real time back in '96. Yeah, I've rewatched pretty much all I could ever get my hands on at ECW, and I watched it contemporaneously in '99 up until the end. So I can appreciate that Styles was like the announcer for that moment, but like a lot of his stuff just doesn't age well, and it's
a fair.
He's not Morrow. He's not as bad as Morrow, but like he's just one of those guys that his commentary, his body of work now isn't.
It's definitely a fair comment because a lot of the ECW stuff was produced it was never going to age well because it was actively trying to be, like riding that
Week
kind
to
of
week.
wave of exactly. So it's difficult. By the way, you mentioned the throwing of the chair. What about when he gets the weapon, the gimmick out at the end, and Bam just kind of ignores it, and he picks him up with the powerbomb, and he's stabbing away at Bam. That was incredible. My God,
dude, Sabu. Even at that point, like the crowd, like half the people are wearing Steve Austin shirts, so they're just like wrestling fans, and they're there, and they know it's a show type thing. But Sabu, like even he fought tooth and nail to keep wrestling looking real in the sense of that he's just stabbing him in the face with his gimmick. Like it's.
Well, I mean, think about it. Just a few months earlier, the dude, if I'm not mistaken, the right match, the Stairway to Hell with Sandman in January '93. He tapes his jaw. Is that the match where he tapes his jaw back together?
Yeah. Is that no? It's the barbed wire one where he talks about Fonzie, get me some tape. I don't have any, Daddy. Well, fucking get some. And then you just see like Fonzie running to the back and then coming back out with a big spool of athletic tape.
Oh bless.
But yeah, it's funny. Bob mentioned Alfonso's whistle because that's my sister is a big wrestling fan, but like will not watch any Rob Van Dam ECW stuff because he drives her so insane.
Real graps.
Yeah.
Lord Oracle, what'd you make of this, mate?
Yeah, this is a super fun one, man. I've always just appreciated the way they shot the that shot of RVD's dive is so incredible. So shot
awesome,
well.
yeah.
They also do a really good job of like when he does the leg drop on the rail. They have the shot of over Bam Bam and then RVD jumping onto him. That's just that's great production. Like it's crazy to see that, like,
Are you saying if you stay with the
fucking
shot,
Rob
it'll look good?
Feinstein, some fucker like that out there doing better, production than whatever than whatever we see now, but look at Joe's upset.
Well, I don't know if we needed to cite his work, but yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but I mean, we've credited enough perverts tonight probably for an evening.
That's true. Although reading what Samoa Joe said about him is incredible, so
right, those live journals are fascinating to explore with history. Fascinating.
Yeah, this is a good match. It's definitely not great. It's just a good encapsulation of what Bam Bam could do in ECW and kind of adapting to that style. I love how, like, when he powerbombs RVD on the table, he just casually drops the elbow to break this. That's like
he starts to go to the left of it to think he can just kind of do it on the outside, and then you can see him be like, "Fuck, I've got to get up on the apron to do this," and so he's like, and just kind of comes up.
By the way, his brainbuster at the end is sweet in that last stretch. Here's that brainbuster where like Van Dam's like straightened up. Oh my god!
Did RVD sell like as murderously in WWE as he did in ECW? I can never really recall. Every time he took a DDT, it looked like he died.
Yeah,
but like
the head bump kind of become like a parody of itself by the end, right? Like every time he would do the big fucking head, the bump on top of his head.
Especially if it took like an RKO.
Yes,
exactly. Like when So, I think he did. TNA is when I think he packed that in and said, "Well, maybe not."
Well, he wasn't there to play hide the ball, brother.
He certainly wasn't. Why would he be? Really, right? Why would he be? Oracle, anything else on this one, mate, before we move
on? No, I just I like to finish too. It's worth noting that, like, the whole idea was like RVD was supposed to just soften up Bam Bam, but instead he wins the title by accident, and not by obviously he took the opportunity to win it because that was the whole RVD Sabu dynamic, was that they didn't really get along for a while. But this was good stuff. I'm glad we kind of captured this deal in time. I like the Taz matches better.
Taz matches better, yeah.
But like as we talked about, and as Alex mentioned on Twitter, that would be too obvious, and we're artists, and we
whatever. To be fair, I also
that popped me huge.
I do think this shows like Bam Bam was kind of famous to a fault for being very selfless as a big man, and like this is a huge moment for Rob, even with all of the ridiculousness of the finish. This is a big moment in his career. So it shine a light on that too.
Especially with that shot that ECW used for so many years. Of the dive.
This was also, remember every once in a while in the 90s, WWF would do a title change, like the tag titles or the IC title on a house show. You can see in the crowd, like, people like, oh shit, he's gonna win, like when he rolls them up, because they weren't expecting a title change, and so like the reaction from the crowd's really good. And I don't know if we're ever gonna do a Rob Van Dam Grin Grappler, so it's worth calling out here from the victory here to when he dropped the belt. His television title run has one of the most eclectic group of challengers of any pro wrestler, like, who had a title run ever.
Absolutely. So I mentioned then, like, selfless Bam Bam, and it's just dawned on me that the next match is the only one of these 6 he wins, which is insane.
I thought about that earlier.
Yeah,
because it's the perfect ending. Because my God, that finish,
brother. Here we go. Spring Stampede '99 World Championship Wrestling, an event billed as, quote, the good, the bad, the showdown. We have
the final great WCW show.
The last great WCW show.
Really, and this is, I was on the Discord with the guys. They were watching this match, and I was saying, I think this may be the weirdest version of WCW of all, because it's like the lost. It's before Bischoff is gone, right? But everyone forgets this time existed, where he just went like insane getting ECW guys, and I mean, obviously Bam Bam's like he's not an ECW guy. But like some of the ECW fellas that Bischoff picked up in this stretch of time.
Mikey Whipwreck's in the next match. I think they signed him for like $500,000 a year.
Unhinged behavior from King Bish. But nonetheless, Bam Bam started big time by targeting Bill Goldberg. He has swiftly settled to
that fucking program ruled, by the way.
The match with no payoff.
Yeah. But when they
awesome.
had
that's how they debuted him. He came out on Nitro and called out Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
They had this great brawl. My brother Dylan always points out this was his like the last thing in WCW, because he grew up. I mean, he was a WWF fan, but he grew up a diehard WCW fan.
Right.
I mean, he was a fan of all wrestling, but he liked WCW more because he's Carolina kid or whatever. And he said this was like the last oh, this shit fucking rules, Like
the timing,
one of the last
weird,
great things WCW did was the Bam Bam Goldberg stuff, the initial stuff. Like they have a great brawl in Chattanooga at the Roundhouse at McKenzie Arena where they brawl outside. That's the one where they brawl outside, Alex. Have you seen it before?
Yeah.
Like they have a huge pull apart outside or whatever. That's at Chattanooga.
Then they went to the City Cafe afterwards, and Bam Bam said, "Give me some turtle cheesecake."
What was with the timing of that stuff? Because they do that in like the build to Starrcade, even though Bill was.
I think it's like literally like days after his last ECW match, he showed up on Nitro.
Yeah, it was after November to Remember '98, like a few days after, and he basically, because like they hadn't quite got to Goldberg Nash yet, so it was kind of like a holdover, it was like a TV feud to like.
Right.
But like at the same time, like Nash got it because it was right around the time Nash got the book.
Oh,
and then Nash got himself involved, and there was like a 3-way kind of feud between.
There was a triple threat on Nitro that.
Yeah, exactly.
The actual Goldberg match was Super Brawl, right?
That's Super Brawl, huh?
Yeah, so that's like because it goes.
The match is pretty decent. I mean, Bammers is like he slows it down to a halt, to be honest. But
yeah.
Like and.
This is not. I mean, this is a pretty rough run, as we
talked
earlier.
It's pretty good, if I remember. Just like kind of Goldberg, comes back and just kind of runs through him, and gets a nice pop. But
I was reading about like that was for months. That was all Goldberg. The house shows he did do was him and Bam Bam, and I'm sure there's one of those that was like a really fun, like 3 or 4 minute sprint.
Yeah.
There's definitely a version of that match that would be a lot better than what we got in that pay-per-view match, but I don't mind it. Hack is 2 months into his run. He's basically been tangled with Bam Bam the whole time, and this is just an insane thing that happened.
He gets put in the hardcore division to anchor it because Bischoff brings all these ECW guys in to make it hard to compete with, Bob Holly and Al Snow and.
I can't remember which episode we did of this where we talked about like what Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff thought ECW was. We had this discussion before, but like this match, this is what Eric Bischoff
Yes.
thought ECW was. Like this is
Yeah.
this is all they do there.
I have to. So the announcing for this match is unlike anything I've ever heard
Unreal.
in my life. But before we even get to the match, there's a moment in which Tony Schiavone confronts Mike Tenay and tells him to like speak to his own attraction for chastity. And Mike Tenay, being a wrestling broadcaster, begins to talk about her ability to transition to professional wrestling. And Tony Schiavone gets mad at him and says, I meant the way she looks, Mike. You had to give us a history lesson.
Is Karen watching at home or something? He says something like that.
He's like actively angry that Mike Tenay is not horny on pay-per-view. This is unhinged.
Tony Schiavone also explains
it's April 99 at Ted Turner's WCW.
Tony Schiavone also explains in this match how wrestling is fake. He explains what is fake about wrestling and how they do moves. It's insane.
Heenan, like I mentioned this in the DMs, but Heenan, like, he was driving people nuts by 99, but like it's so refreshing. He's so funny when you compare to like everything he says is funny here.
Everything he says is funny here. Table spots are open. They brawl down the ramp, and Bam Bam shoots him off into the car, and Hack just takes a fucking header and does like a headstand when he takes the bump.
Real quick, about chastity, I forgot to bring this back up, but like, I don't know if this is like what Schiavone was getting at, but she had done pornographic video before she got into wrestling. And
it's not so much what he's getting at as the fact that he's like, what did he want Mike to say? Like, this is what I'm trying. I do not know. I've been thinking about this all day.
New Jack told the story that she was originally Devon Dudley's girlfriend, and that's how she got into ECW, and that someone had her like porn tape, and I don't mean like a homemade sex tape, like 90s production porn, and they had it on backstage of the arena, and Devon walked in and was just like, what the fuck? And so I don't know if it made the rounds at WCW as well. So that could have, I think Tony Schiavone still to this day. Yeah. I was about to say, Tony Schiavone to this day is well, now he's a lecherous old man. Then he was a lecherous middle-aged man. So,
he's very mad here. Very upset about it.
He's horny on the timeline, man.
I don't know why when
Shotzi posts something.
On that note, Bob, what do you think of the match?
I thought it was very good. I was, like, oh, hey, the set looks pretty cool. And the next thing I know, Sandman's jumping off the stagecoach through the table. And we were kind of on from there. He's a lunatic in this match. Like,
yes, he is.
I've never seen any of him in WCW. I don't know if this is what it was all the time or
yeah.
This is
much to see, to be honest. Yeah.
But yeah. No, this is crazy. Really good one to end on. I enjoyed the match quite a bit, as a whole. But just a great piece of business, man. Commentary made it fun. The stuff they're hitting each other with. They hit them with a like see-through salad bowl at one point, just busting out everything. And that's fun. We all enjoy that.
We do. The greatest moment in this match by far is when Hack attempts, I believe, a suplex. Appears to blow his knee out, collapses,
dude,
and then rolls.
Fucking belly laughed at that.
Mm-hmm. But the thing that the real pop is not the way he goes down. He rolls to ringside and then pulls a ladder out.
Well,
after appearing to destroy his leg.
It would have to kill Bam Bam because Bam Bam just lands gut first on Hack's knees, and Hack's doing that ow like that, clearly in pain cell. And then I have it written down. Schiavone goes, well, whatever that was.
He did. He actually said that. All right, Alex, we'll stick with you. Just speak to what this was insane, man. Go for it.
WCW was still thriving here, and fucking Sandman was under contract. Like that is so funny to me. And it's like you said, the Bischoff's desire to kind of raid ECW and do what he could. For those who are unfamiliar with the show, I'm going to run down the card real quick, and you really should just watch this show start to finish. Like, if I was a WCW fan, they were getting the shit kicked out of them by this point by WWF, and if like in real time when this show ended, I would have been like, "We're back, baby!" And of course, that didn't last long. But Juventud Guerrera versus Blitzkrieg, which a lot of people say was the match in '99. Bammers and Hack. Riggs against Mikey Whipwreck, Conan versus Disco Inferno, Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Billy Kidman, Redacted and Dean Malenko against Raven and Perry Saturn, which is a really good tag match. Scott Steiner against Booker T, Goldberg against Nash, which is, I think, worlds beyond their Starrcade match. I like that one way more. And then the main event is DDP, Ric Flair, Hogan, and Sting in a 4-way with Randy Savage as a guest referee. And you would think it falls apart, but it's actually pretty fun. So I recommend checking out that show. Sandman, every time I see him, I just go, yow. That's like immediately what I think of when I see his face. You have my note here. Sandman had a WCW contract, and then Chastity's out there. Bob said it, like, Sandman, like in that 95, like when he first became the Sandman, which would been like late 94, 95, and 96, he was still kind of trying to be a wrestler, and he would do he did crazy shit, but his matches were always
like a side headlock takedown for some reason.
Yeah, and like his matches would try to be like structured matches, but then in 97 he just kind of, I guess, was drinking more and kind of, he's awesome. Like 97 to 99 Sandman is awesome. Everything he does offensively or defensively looks like it fucking hurts, because it probably does. Because like like that leg drop he does on the guardrail in this match, where he does the splits in midair and then lands like on his dick and ass on the guardrail, like that had to, and he's immediately like, ah, and but his story of like how they saw him in this one, it might be this one, he told that story about Dusty Rhodes came up to him with a spool of barbed wire and said, "Yo, Hack, look what I got right here, baby." And he's like, "Yes, Dusty, that's barbed wire." He goes, "You're gonna wear it to the ring, baby." And he's, why? Because you crave it, that type of thing.
That was his debut on Nitro. He's wearing barbed wire to the ring.
Yes. Hack did get a WCW action figure, and he's one of the guys that got a legit WCW, ECW, and WF action figure.
Yeah.
That's something to hang your hat on. And for a guy who never had a match that I would give above 2 stars, that's something to hang your hat on. The best way possible, because this is a great example of that. He jumps off the stagecoach. I just expect him to do like an axe handle or something. He does a fucking front flip off of it.
Yes.
And they're set for time, so they got to no-sell it because they got to brawl down the ring.
Yeah, and then Shivani's going off, and they do the trash can spots, and he's like, folks, those trash cans make a good noise, but they don't really hurt. And it's it's the scene of The Wrestler when they're in the dollar store buying all the shit to hit each other with. It's just Shivani explaining, hey, this shit's fake. Oh, and Shivani does at one point say, when Chastity's emptying out the cart, he goes, she's getting all the gimmicks out.
Oh my good God.
Like when JBL, get all the toys, Michael.
And Tanay says he potatoed him too. This fella's doing a fucking Observer commentary track.
Oh fuck. Okay.
Unrelated to really Bam Bam, but Sandman's finisher, the Russian leg sweep with the kendo stick, being called the White Russian leg sweep, that may be one of the greatest names for a finisher ever. I think that's fantastic. Perfect. And then I wrote down in all caps, "Oh my God," because of the finish where, for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a table in the corner of the ring. It's a bit close to the corner. Bam Bam's supposed to give Hack the greetings from Asbury Park, which is kind of like
it's almost like a folded up. It's almost like a
it's like a snowplow.
It's like a snowplow and
Northern Light Bomb.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
But they're so crunched for the space that like Bam Bam just kind of gets him up, and he's like, "Fuck it," and the Hack just like collapses into himself while landing on top of a fire extinguisher that was in the ring, because they had this fire extinguisher spot that went awry. And it's one of those things. It's over. What is it? It's 11 minutes long, and the crowd is going ape shit at the end of the match. And I just thought of Jimmy King. Crowd liked it, and it's like it really signifies how lost WCW was and like what they thought was like good for their pay-per-views and shit. But it's so much fun, and it's like watching any Sandman match from the era. It's just complete chaos, and like he could have died at any moment in like matches that he had for years. Like the shit in ECW, like He could have, and not from like a Misawa like backdrop driver thing. He would just fall off of shit, and it's really fun to watch. I guess because he's still alive, it's fun, and that he never did die in the ring. But not the most dignified note to end on. But God, what a good time!
It's a hoot. It's kind of a party match, kind of. 1999 party match. Oracle, you were bullish. You said we gotta get this hack match in there.
Oh man!
And I wasn't convinced, and I revisited and was like, Oracle was right. Yeah, this is
this is a total blast, man. Just
it's art.
Hack is doing all kinds of stupid shit, and Bammer's going along for the ride, and because Bam Bam he worked 2 years in ECW. He knows how to do this shit.
Mm-hmm.
So he's over there, and right away. Alex, you put this out on Twitter, and I guess when Heenan says it looks like two custodians fighting. That immediately was like, you know what? Sandman does kind of look like he's, like a short order cook for Denny's.
Dude, imagine because the etiquette would have still been really high back in this days. You have to shake everyone's hand. Imagine Randy Savage shaking Hack's hand backstage. Yo, Sandman there with his fucking bottle of vodka and gallon of milk.
Oh, fuck. And so they have this ridiculous match, and the commentary is a total riot. And Chastity comes in, and it's all fire extinguisher spots, all botched. Of course, the finish is right before they set up for the crazy insane finish. He shoots the fire extinguisher up her ass.
He tucks it into her shorts that she's wearing, and just like she should have flown into the front row.
And Heenan always does the comical, like in the post match. Heenan has to describe what's going on, and he's like, "Well, we're blowing smoke up, wherever smoke goes." Shivani just loses it and starts bursting out laughing.
What about when poor Chastity had to set up the table again? And she had to reapply. Do you remember that when it fell?
Oh yeah, dude! Fucking blown up Sandman's like, fix that.
Yeah.
This was such a chaotic shit show, but it's so fun. It's such a fun match. The finish is an all-time great, and like I said, Greetings from Asbury Park, all-time great name for a finisher. And he basically it's hard to describe. You have to see it, but the finish is as Alex describes. Hack literally folds into himself and goes head first into a fucking.
They just kind of crumple. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you don't see it at first because the table breaks, and then Shivani goes, "Oh, right into that fire extinguisher!" Even from the top, oh shit! Yeah, this was worth it.
Such a blast. And you're right, it isn't dignified, but it fucking rules. Who gives a shit? What a treat. What a way to end. There we go, folks. That's our final match. Before we look ahead, any other matches from this? We have the Taz match, goes without saying, right? That's
both of them.
We have to mention both.
As I mentioned earlier, with in '99 when ECW started on TNN, that's when I started following week to week until their end. I just kind of followed them through Aftermags really occasionally, but I never knew Bam Bam had a run in ECW, and it's the Heat Wave match where they do the crash through the aisleway. I remember they showed that in the opening. I was like, was that fucking Bam Bam Bigelow? And then, kind of the more internet access I had, finding more and more. But yeah, both the Taz matches. The first one is when they go through the ring, right? And the second one's the entranceway.
Yeah.
I believe that's right.
Because Bam wins the belt, right? In the first one.
Yes, you're right. And that's the one of my favorite things Paul Heyman ever did, because that match was there were still 2 or 3 matches left to go on the show, and they just put caution tape around that side of the ring where the hole was in it, and that's visually very funny. So the Taz matches, the triple threat with Taz and Sabu, the Spike Dudley matches fucking rule. You know what you're gonna get, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Just because Devin will know what I'm talking about. Anyone who ever watched an ECW program one time in their life knows that the Battle of the Bam Bams. It's Bam Bam Bigelow against Terry Bam Bam Gordy. It's Extreme Warfare Volume 2. That match is not good, but it's It's also funny because it literally, like, I've never seen it really come up online, and it's not on the network. It's just if you had that tape, you had it. It's probably because it sucked so bad no one bothered to upload it. But you want to see one of the worst matches you'll ever see in your life is the November to Remember 1998 main event, where it was Sabu, RVD, and Taz against Shane Douglas, Chris Candido, and Bam Bam Bigelow. It is unforgivably bad. And the story was Heyman was so mad about it, he tackled Taz when he came back through the curtain and started like hitting him like the fuck, and like Sabu and RVD had to pull him off. Like, what are you doing? He's gonna kill you. It's worth bringing up for that because that's the part of the reason it wasn't good was because Bam Bam, that was the last match with the company. I did bring up when we were putting together the lineup for this, the TV segment and match in which Bam Bam challenges Shane Douglas for the ECW title.
Great angle.
It's such an awesome segment because Shane and Francine are out there, and he's like, "I've beaten everybody. Cut the fucking music. I can do anything." And then Rick Rude comes out, and he's like, "I found a challenger for you." And it's Bam Bam, and it's the whole, like, Candido comes down to try to restore peace because it's the Triple Threat, which was a really cool faction. And he beats him there. It's at the New York venue, the Madhouse of Extreme, whatever they called it.
Yeah. Awesome
And then,
venue.
yeah, November to Remember 97, the main event was Bam Bam defending the title against Shane Douglas in one of like the most polarizing matches of all time. I don't think it's really that good. It goes on way too long, but like Heyman really tries to present it like a big fight. Like they follow Shane backstage through the curtain out to the ring, and it's in Pittsburgh, Shane's hometown. So the match isn't that good, but the crowd stays so hot for it, and they lose it for the finish when Shane wins. That it's worth checking out. And then aside from that, the one I did bookmark, he had some Nitro match with Rey Mysterio Jr. that went 10 minutes long.
Good.
Okay, I was about to say I can't imagine a scenario in which that wouldn't be fun, so I'm gonna have to check that out.
It was during Ray's Giant Killer gimmick after he got the mask taken off. Yeah.
Yeah, that match absolutely. Oracle, any others, mate, from this period of time?
I feel like there's a Triple Threat 6-man from the ECW set. That was awesome. Might have been the one where Al Snow is in it.
Is that
it's in the arena, Alex, and it has one of the greatest entrances of all time in the arena because Triple Threat come out to, of course, Perfect Strangers.
Do you remember?
The heat is incredible. I think all the fans are holding like the Al Snow head as they're coming out. They throw the heads at him. I think I could be misremembering because it was around the time they had, Snow had gotten really over and stuff. So.
Yeah, that the Triple Threat, like just aesthetically, that's when Shane Douglas was in full on God mode, where he was juiced like to the absolute fucking maximum, and he had the long hair and the act that was so good. Triple H stole it bit for bit, and Bam Bam. Well, the thing was, Bam Bam always looked so huge behind him too. It was good shit.
Right.
Yeah, that is a hell of a visual. Absolutely. All right, let's put a bow on Grin Grappler, Bam Bam Bigelow, and then we'll pick our next grappler. Bobby, final thoughts on the legacy of Bam Bam Bigelow. Go for it, mate.
Well, it's like we talked about to start the show, like 6 different promotions in what was 13 years, because 1986 to 1999 that we covered here, like, and just how much changed and how he was able to change. Like, he didn't fully change, but he evolved enough to stay relevant. And he's never going to be in the top probably 50 of anyone's best workers list, probably not even top 100, but like we were kind of getting into earlier, there's something to be said for just kind of changing with the times, even if it's a shorter career than most guys had, just because that's how things were back then. Like, it's and to have, again, highlight matches in 6 promotions, there's not a ton of people that have done that, let alone in just over a decade.
Absolutely. Alex, what do you think, mate? The legacy of Bam Bam?
Be hard pressed to find someone who main evented a pay-per-view with Andre the Giant and Shane Douglas. Hard to find someone who did that. On that Dark Side of the Ring about him, Meltzer talked about the first time he saw him, he's like, this guy's going to be the biggest thing in wrestling. And in some ways you have to think like he should have been much bigger than he was.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that have been lesser wrestlers than he to attain high levels of success. And you think about just his look and how marketable he would have been, and like someone called it out in the chat I saw earlier, but yeah, he had a role in Major Pain, but it's like, dude, if they had gone with him, imagine him showing up on like, Cheers or something, whatever the shows of the time were, and it's like, oh hey, it's WWF champion Bam Bam Bigelow. What are you doing here? So you have to think that he should have been bigger than he was. He also was probably very naive when he got in, and people like Andre and Hogan and shit. And then when he got back, Shawn Michaels, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, it was just he chose two bad times to try to be a top guy. But he clearly had a knack for it and figured out how to adapt. And, again, less than 50 people who have ever lived have main evented a WrestleMania, and he's one of them. And that's something that, like, I think so. I've never done the numbers on that, but that sounds about right, because a lot of guys have main evented numerous times. Mm-hmm. But that and his visual will live on forever. It's a weird one, because his and it was very cliche and stereotypical pro wrestler. Just got hooked on painkillers and shit, and it took him to his final resting place. He's not Terry Funk. He's not Bret Hart. He's not Stan Hansen. He's not the best wrestler we've talked about on here. But if there was ever a guy who had like a look and an aura for professional wrestling, you're not going to find many more that check all the boxes than Bam Bam Bigelow. And for as politically sabotaged, you could say, as he was kind of almost every step along the way, there are people that have memories of him in WWF, in WCW, and ECW, and Japan, UWF, all this other shit, and they're distinctive. It's not just like, oh yeah, he kind of went these places and did this shit. And that is something that really only Terry Funk you would have an immediate comparison to. So, has a good legacy. Good, not great in terms of what he could have been. And never going to be like my go-to if I need to pick a wrestler whose catalog I'm going to like watch back through or something like that. But man, just some of the names we've dropped along the way here of people he wrestled like in their prime. It's fucking crazy. He a very noble career in the profession that he chose for the last 25 years of his life.
Absolutely. Oracle, what do you think, mate? Final thoughts on Bam Bam?
One more match to throw out there. The Scott Hall ladder match from Nitro is awesome. Like, that's a really good TV Nitro main event.
No doubt.
Yeah, he's the perfect encapsulation of what a wrestler is supposed to look like. How kind of how they're supposed to be presented and feel and aura, presence, all that stuff. We could talk about how his catalog isn't deep, but that's the thing about wrestling. Deep catalogs only matter for nerds like us. Like
absolutely.
Only the super nerds. And even if you, and even people like us, you sit there and you reevaluate and you think about it from all angles. He was just a really good pro wrestler. He had the look, had the feel. He was fun. He could fit in so many different promotions, so many different places, as Alex pointed out. Very much a wrestling chameleon, as I talked about earlier. He just and he has a legacy everywhere he went. Had a really great career, even if he didn't reach all the highs and match all the potential that he had. He definitely still has a great legacy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Because he definitely is a guy who it's hard to walk along that journey and not stop multiple times with what ifs. We did it tonight. If we had more time, we'd do it. Twice as much. He's a guy who, honestly, the thing we've celebrated tonight about him bouncing around so much probably hurt him in some ways too, right? Like you wonder. When you look at his time in Japan, you kind of do wonder if he'd have stuck in New Japan, for example, how differently he ends up standing in history, and we'll never know. But the route he took,
I can see him having think about like a 10-minute Hashimoto match. You know, when Hashimoto was the biggest star in Japan.
Exactly.
You know, in New Japan, that would have ruled, man. Like,
yeah, man. And the route he took was unconventional in a lot of ways. He found himself in places that didn't really maximize what he was capable of, but as we said, he adjusted accordingly. But regardless of what we make of his route in hindsight, it worked to the extent that, as we've mentioned throughout the night, he's beloved in history. He's really a celebrated legend in wrestling. More so than guys that had more fame, at the time and more success at the time. He is someone who has stood the test of time, an iconic look, forever kind of etched in history as one of the great agile big men. And I think it's really interesting how different wrestlers, their legacies age, and kind of watching that process unfold. And as we do this here in 2023, Bam Bam Bigelow is still someone that people very much celebrate. And so that's really cool, and it speaks to those memories that we've all referenced throughout the night, and the fact they span so many different times and promotions. So a really unique case, not a favorite of mine by any means, but someone that we use that word a lot. Fun, right? Enjoy watching him. Great presence, great look, some really fun matches, even if not, a great collection of classics by any means. A pro wrestler, right? That's the thing, Oracle. You circled it, mate. He was a pro wrestler, and a very, very fun one at that. So there he is, Grin Grappler, Bam Bam Bigelow. All right,
throw up the triple threat for old time's sake.
There we go. All right, we ready to look at October? Next up, okay, we've got 6 names here to list. We're going to start with a couple fellow monsters, a fellow big men. I mentioned him earlier. In many ways, a great contrast to Bam Bam, a guy who was alongside him in terms of era. The great Yokozuna is on the board for October. Bob O'Neill's favorite wrestler is alongside him. Abyss, a monster in an era that really wasn't ready to embrace monsters again, but a hell of a talent nonetheless. We have a more conventional pick we have a couple options there. We have Eddie Guerrero. We have Edge, who could be relevant very soon, I think. And would be interesting. I don't think any of us like big fans, but there's definitely some cool matches to delve into. We have Scott Hall. We have Scott Hall. And of course, we have the aforementioned cult of personality, CM Punk. So,
Phil?
A real range of wrestlers there, I think it's fair to say. A couple of guys who are kind of been in the news a lot this year. A couple of guys who are Abyss, honestly, feels like an opposite of Bam Bam, where it kind of feels like people have forgotten what he was for a minute there. To me, anyway.
My first question was going to be, if we pick Abyss, can we do a Joseph Park match too?
We have to do a bonus if nothing else, right? We have
to. The Bully Ray one.
Yeah, probably the Slammiversary one.
Oh, yeah. So good.
Yeah. Bob, I always get you first because you get very spiteful. Otherwise, who you leaning to, mate?
This is tough, man. This might be the best kind of group that we've had. October's a really loaded month for birthdays, I suppose. But I really don't want to do Edge just because,
yeah, me either. I was being polite.
I like him. It's good. I just have seen it all, and Punk would be interesting, but a lot of that's been discussed at length as well.
It has.
Yeah, I think Eddie would be a fun one if you kind of are able to stray away from, maybe don't do the rematch from Halloween Havoc, maybe don't do, some of the bigger.
God.
Uh-oh.
Is he back?
That cut out.
You back.
Uh-oh. There we go. Are we good? Yeah. I think I would go with either Yoko or Scott Hall. That's where I'm at.
New Gem pilled. Interesting. Alex, what are you thinking here?
I mean, someone already called it out in the chat, but obviously, if we were wanting to attract views, Punk would be the obvious one. But it's
We do the opposite around here, brother.
I don't want to talk about that guy for 3 hours right now.
That's why I'm ready for 2024, man. You know, this whole news cycle, this whole year is about Punk.
Let's do it next year. Yeah. Let's lock it in.
Be awesome when Devin has to review CM Punk versus Seth Rollins on pay-per-view. It's going to be wonderful. And at this point with Punk, like, any of his great matches have been covered to death. So we would have to do we'd have to do his CZW match with Justice Pain. That was just an absolute cataclysmic disaster. That would be great. Anyway, I like Abyss. The Axe would be difficult breaking that up.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Scott Hall too. Like, God, he's great, but the last act would be so depressing. It's kind of the.
He's hard to do without doing the cliche matches too.
Very. And, in my humble opinion, I think his ladder match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10 has been discussed a fair amount.
Yeah, it's pretty popular. Yeah.
Yoko would be interesting because I don't know how we'd fill that out to 6 acts, and also we'd run into a Goldberg situation where every match is 3 minutes long, so we'd have to kind of pad it a little bit.
I'm intrigued by Yoko is not really built for this show, but he's an interesting companion to the show we just did. And I think it may be worth us bending our format a little to do some Yoko. That's me personally. I don't mind. Yeah. I mean, I'm open to do it.
Mine would either be Yoko or, and again, not taking anything away from Abyss because I could easily rattle off 20 Abyss matches to watch right now. But if we did Eddie B-sides, because Eddie, like his catalog, as we keep using that word, everyone goes to the same shit over and over again. It's the When the Worlds Collide tag match, the Brock match, the Rey Mysterio match, the Malenko ECW match. If we were able to find some like really true B-sides, I'd be down with that.
You'd definitely be able to.
I think so.
I don't think it'd be hard.
The home run hitter of that list,
fucking psychopath Devin was like, "Hey, watch this TV match with Lex Luger," and we're like, "Okay," and then we're like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life."
Yeah, there's plenty of those. We could definitely do an Eddie B sides. Although the one home run match I'd probably recommend would be the Ray match from SmackDown 05.
We have to do the JBL match too.
The Judgment Day one.
Yeah, the Judgment Day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
God, that fucking rules.
But yeah, of like the couple of home run hitters, Eddie would be my pick. Abyss is like the kind of out of the box pick I like.
I'm down for Eddie.
Yeah.
So it's probably best that we do return to a more like, I don't want to say obvious, but
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I described, you want to do a home run hitter every couple of months, probably.
Yeah, just keep people honest.
I also think I think this match is on the network, and it could keep us fresh with the Steiner boys. Eddie Guerrero and the Steiner brothers versus Cactus Jack, Dean Malenko, and Too Cold Scorpio.
Oh yeah, that rules.
ECW, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that. Okay, there's some material here. We can get creative for this. Great. All right, there is. We're locking it in, fellas. Grin Grappler, Eddie Guerrero up next. Pencil in on your calendar, 2024. Oracle Live declared that will be the CM Punk episode, October 2024. That'll probably be, what do you reckon, 2 months after the Owens match, SummerSlam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So be relevant. Building to War Games, I'd imagine. So we'll have some juice heading into that. Definitely everything will go smoothly.
It's the Bloodline versus the Straight Edge Society
versus Phil's friends.
Phil's friends. And Roman ends the go home promo and Punk's face going boom, boom, and then drops the mic.
Yeah, I think everything will go pretty smoothly over the next year. Right? It's not like anything.
It's not like he's about to be 45, and if he came back to the WWF, he would try to do the shit he can't do and injure himself again.
I'm sure it'll be fine. He's not generally Punk is not a guy whose wrestling scenarios kind of blow up. You can kind of bet on.
True.
Anyway, I enjoyed Chicago, so let's close it there. All right, folks. Grin Grappler, Bam Bam Bigelow, Bobby. Any final words, any plugs, any promotions, so on and so forth?
No, I don't believe so. I don't know when I'll be back. I will not be on the Late Night Grin on Thursday. Do not expect to see me there. I will not be there. Next week, I am going to Mexico, so I probably won't do any shows next week. And yeah, I'll be back. I think like October 11th, so be fun.
Alex, do you remember the Bjorn Rebney tweet? Mexico! ! Do you remember that? It was his last tweet for like years. Bob should log off forever with that tweet.
You work in Vikingo or something?
I'm going to a wedding.
Vikingo's wedding?
Yes.
Their commander can't make a shot, so they're just gonna have Bob work under a mask, the commander mask. It won't stick out that he's 3.5 feet taller than that fuck.
It will stand out though, because Bob's mechanics will be tight. Anyway, Oracle, do you have anything to promote, my friend?
I guess I'll be here on Thursday night.
Wrestle Dream, brother.
I'll get off work at 8, so I'll roll in at about 9:35. Whatever the hell.
That's
just
fun.
talk about that Wrestle Dream gimmick that I'm debating whether I want to drop money on. We'll see.
Yeah.
Is that this weekend?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, there's also an NXT show this weekend that I might actually watch for the first time ever.
Oh my God. What a time to be a wrestling fan.
Yeah, I don't know. I won't watch that show live because I might be at the Tennessee South Carolina game, so we'll see how that goes.
Football on. All right.
Yeah, football on.
We'll see him Thursday, folks. The Oracle of Wrestling back on the flagship.
I will be here.
Contrarian Alex, what's happening with the Contrarians, brother? Tell us about it.
We recently dropped our Double Indemnity episode, requested by our good friend John Keating, John Bolo, also Frank, 2014, Michael Fassbender, I guess indie comedy, you call it. What are we doing this week? We just did an Indian film called Vikram from this past year, which, man, their style of making movies is just not for me. Like 3 hours meandering, it's rough. But we had a good discussion about that, and then we're doing the Mark Wahlberg movie Four Brothers, and then the original George Romero Dawn of the Dead's coming up soon. So that is me and my buddy Julio, who at this point has some wrestling knowledge just because I shoehorn shit into discussion. But I told you that thing about like after we did our patron series on The Rock versus John Cena, he's like, I know about wrestling now. And he said he listened to one of these episodes. He's like, I had no idea what you guys were talking about. Like, there's levels to this shit, brother. Come on now. Who do you think you're fucking with? But we are thecontrarians.com, at Contrarian Prime on Twitter, and at Contrarian Alex from myself, as always. We continue to plug y'all's show because you are so gracious to let us do the same on here. So thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Our pleasure as always. There we go, folks. So up next for the Grin Grappler, Eddie Guerrero, one of the all-time greats. That'll be a hell of a time, I'm sure. Before then, as the fellas mentioned, Thursday, 9 Eastern, the late night Grin. We're going to be talking Wrestle Dream, just catching up in general. And Oracle's going to be there. So there has to be a good house, right? Has to be. Mm-hmm. All right. This has been a pleasure, folks. We hope you've enjoyed it. Keep grinning. All how.
Bam, bam.
Enjoy this outro. Good night, everyone.